the meeting of Orangeville Town Council for Monday, June 13th, 2022. Could we have an approval of the agenda, please? Motion to approve the agenda. Councillor Post, second by Councillor Sherwood. All in favor?
Yes.
Any disclosures of direct or indirect pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Ms. Portman-Cherry, could we have the singing of our national anthem, please?
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you to David Nairn, Artistic Director of Theatre Orangeville. We'd like to acknowledge the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people, including the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and the Odawa of the Three Fires Confederacy. This meeting is being aired on public television and are streamed live, may be taped for later public broadcast or webcast. Your name is part of the public record and will be included in the minutes of this meeting. Any member of the public connecting via telephone is reminded to press *6 to mute and unmute. Please remain muted until the chair requests comments or questions from the public. Could we have a motion to adopt the minutes of the meetings of Special Council meeting of May 25th, 2022 and May 30th, 2022? Could we have a motion for that, please? Councillor Andrews, second by Councillor Peters. Any comments? All in favor?
Yes.
Thank you very much. We have a busy agenda tonight, and so I'm going to ask those giving presentations for try and be as have some brevity in their presentations. The first one that we're going to get into is to just let me pull up my file here. We're going to be honoring our Ontario Senior of the Year award winner. Ms. Banks, are you with us tonight?
Yes, sir.
There she is. All right. So, Linda, congratulations again. I know we had a ceremony last week where you were presented awards and some certificates from Mr. Seaback's office and Ms. Jones' office and also from the town. This particular award was a provincial award, and you were certainly well deserving of this. And let me read you this note, information and bio on Ms. Banks. Linda Banks, having moved to Orangeville only 7 years ago, has been involved with the community in so many ways. Ms. Banks has helped with fundraisers and volunteered her time at many community events. Linda can be found volunteering her time as an usher with Theatre Orangeville. She sits on the Heritage Orangeville Committee and was very influential with Heritage Orangeville calendar and heritage displays during Heritage Week. She's an active member of the local division of the Probus Club of Orangeville, and she's annually walked in the Coldest Night of the Year campaign, raising money for our local food bank. She has volunteered with the Orangeville Blues and Jazz Festival and is a volunteer with the Orangeville Senior Center, running programs such as assistance with income tax, dancing, and organizing bus trips. Linda has lobbied hard with the county and provincial government to obtain affordable dental coverage for seniors. She has also volunteered with the Orangeville Library and is treasurer of the Friends of the Orangeville Public Library, and helps with organizing to raise funds for the library via book sales, bake sales, and draws. She's a great ambassador to our community and well deserving of the Ontario Senior of the Year Award for 2022. Linda, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Thank you, Mayor Brown. Well, First, I'd like to thank Council for nominating me for this award, Senior of the Year Award. Mayor Brown, Deputy Mayor Andy McIntosh, Councilors Debbie Sherwood, Lisa Post, Todd Taylor, Joe Andrews, and Grant Peters. Thank you so much.
All right, Linda. Well, you've certainly touched many lives in your work throughout volunteering in our community, and we all thank you very much. All the best, Linda.
Thank you.
Okay.
Would I be able to continue my thank yous?
Oh, of course. Go right ahead.
I'd also like to thank the Mayor Brown, for presenting the award to me. It was nice to see your signature, your name and your signature on the award with the Honorable Raymond Cho and Her Honor, the Honorable Elizabeth Dowdswell. That was really nice to see your signature with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to thank Sylvia Jones, MPP, and Sandra Pinkney from Kyle Seeback's office for attending and presenting me with letters of recognition. And thank you, Sharon and Diane of Theater Orangeville, for attending and their kind wishes, or the kind wishes from Sharon. That was very nice of them to be there. I'd like to thank Andrea Shaw, Executive Assistant to Mayor Brown, for contacting me when needed, and thank her along with town staff for being at Monday's presentation. I wanted to mention one thing about the senior center that I'm involved in right now, and I'm really enjoying it. It's called Cyber Seniors. So I'm helping seniors with their iPhones, we're helping people with their iPhones, iPads, Android phones, and tablets. So I help every Tuesday, just about, with the tablets for Android and the phones as well. So it's very exciting and it's nice to help people. Seniors helping seniors, that's what I'm calling it.
Well, thank you for sharing that information. I'm sure if there's any seniors listening, they should contact the senior center and get some tips from you.
Well, we're there for everyone to help. So I look forward to going on Tuesdays. Now, I will continue volunteering and helping out whenever needed in this town of Orangeville, where I'm proud to call home. Thanks so much.
All right, Linda. Well, congratulations. You've done an excellent job for us, and we really appreciate it. And we'll be seeing you at many events in the future. So thank you again, Linda. All the best.
Thanks, you.
Linda.
Bye-bye now.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Okay. All right. Moving on to our next presentation. We're welcoming the president of Orangeville Hydro, Rob Kokok, who's going to deliver the 2021 annual report. Mr. Kokok, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. And can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. And that was a pleasure to be able to watch that last delegate and presentation. Feel honored to be able to witness that. With me here tonight is Amy Long, the Chief Financial Officer from Orangeville Hydro. Amy, I'll start talking in the essence of time, and Amy will bring up the slides. So I'll let you do that, Amy, while I start. So again, thank you to everyone at council for the opportunity to be here. And of course, thank you to everyone in the town of Orangeville for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Rob Kokok. I'm the president of Orangeville Hydro, as I mentioned. And of course, Amy's here today as well, our chief financial officer. So and as Mayor Brown mentioned, we have the honor of presenting the 2021 annual report. The next slide is a reminder of the organizational structure of Orangeville Hydro. We have two shareholders, with the town of Orangeville owning 94.5% and the town of Grand Valley owning the remaining 5.5%. The town of Orangeville appoints we have 7 board of directors. 6 of them are appointed by the town of Orangeville, and the remaining 1 is appointed by the town of Grand Valley. Of the 7, We have 3 that are considered non-independent because they're directly related to the shareholders, and 4 are considered independent board of directors. Moving on to the next slide. Reminder to council, but for those that may be hearing this presentation for the first time, Orangeville Hydro is the local distribution company, otherwise known as the electric utility for the town of Orangeville and the town of Grand Valley. We have a long-standing mission to provide safe, reliable electrical energy while being accountable to our shareholders, the citizens of the town of Orangeville and the town of Grand Valley. Looking back at 2021, some of the activities that took place. So we did have continued strong reliability statistics for the distribution system, providing a reliable power to our customers. When we consider our reliability, we often look, how did we compare to our peers? You know, how did we compare to the provincial average? And 2021 was another strong year. Like many organizations throughout the world these days, we continue to enhance our cybersecurity capabilities, and of course, continued our work from home capabilities throughout the core of the pandemic, as we had lessons learned from 2020 and continued the working remotely ability throughout 2021. Starting really from the top, the board of Orangeville Hydro introduced a net zero 2050 target for our corporate carbon emissions within our strategic plan. While it started in the discussions around the board table, it was quickly adopted and an exciting long-term vision to have at Orangeville Hydro. And we're already hitting the ground running on sort of the analytics side of things, looking at our historical carbon emissions, as well as logging what are our current carbon emitting devices, equipment, and where do those emissions come from. We, of course, with safety being a top priority, conducted safety training through the entire organization. It's not just for the trades, it's not just for the field staff. This is an organization-wide focus from the front office management all the way, of course, into the field staff. We had continued strong financial performance and also provided our shareholders with a substantial dividend. Looking at some customer service highlights, 2021, we still had available the COVID-19 Energy Assistance Program, nicknamed CEAP. And the CEAP funds we distributed from the sort of provincial pot to our customers was $39,138. As well as the next 2 aren't specific to COVID funding. It's funding that we have every year for our customers, but we did distribute the Low Income Energy Assistance Program, nicknamed LEAP, the LEAP funds of $16,782, as well as the Ontario Electricity Support Program, which all low volume customers have available to them. And it's an automatic deduction, no need to apply on our customers' bills. And that's $288,995. And the Ontario Electricity Support Program is funded by provincial tax dollars, and it helps to reduce our local electricity bills. Now, also mentioning we did have improved credit card payment capabilities. This is a reaction to listening to our customers through our customer satisfaction surveys. We heard loud and clear that our customers want to be able to pay by credit card, and which is not surprising. That's how many people do pay their bills. And so we right now, through quickly going to our website, our customers are able to click make a payment, and we've removed any transaction convenience fees that many of our peers and other utilities in the province charge. We made sure that for our customers that would like to pay by credit card, we make that as streamlined and easy as possible. Also, onto the next slide, continuing with 2021 activities, talk about some of our capital projects. Some of the infrastructure projects that were completed by our line crew in 2021 were the voltage conversion of Robb Boulevard and Hillside Drive. That's removing our older aged 4 kV network and upgrading it to 28 kV, 28,000 volts, which is our new, more efficient system. and higher capacity system. We did a conductor upgrade on Centennial Road. So right before the Centennial Road construction began, we got in there while relocating our pole line so that the construction crew could relocate the road. We also took the opportunity to upgrade our conductor all the way from Sea Line over to Dawson Road. And that conductor upgrade will be able to provide additional capacity throughout the town of Orangeville, as well as provide more redundancy in the event of if one feeder goes down, that's an express route to backfeed the town in another direction. Moving into Grand Valley, we rebuilt a rear lane pole line, the rear lane of Main Street on the east side behind the grocery store all the way down to Royal Bank in Grand Valley, rebuilt that pole line. We continued our pole replacement program throughout both service territories, and of course connected new homes, businesses, and a little bit more a pretty exciting electric vehicle charger with the Tesla charger being connected in the Walmart area, 95 First Street in Orangeville. Looking at the regulated price plan, so what we're talking about here is the tiered and time of use rates that are low, what we call low volume customers, meaning residential and small businesses, will pay. So our customers do have the choice to choose between time of use rates and tiered rates. That wasn't always the case throughout the last 2 years. That's did come into play where our customers could actually now choose their preferred rate structure. What we're showing here is the rate per the cost in cents per kilowatt hour, all the way back to the 2005, 2006 timeframe moving forward. So from the early 2000 or mid 2000s, the 2005, 2006 timeframe, all the way to say about 2017, there was a upward pressure on the cost of electricity. These just like to point out, these are the costs that customers pay throughout the entire province. These are not unique to Orangeville Hydro. These are the costs that go to pay the generation and the generation such as the nuclear, the solar, wind, hydroelectric, and natural gas facilities throughout the province, and going back into the early 2000s, even coal back then. So there was a upward pressure until 2017, where the trend was thrown out of whack because of the Ontario Fair Hydro Plan, and then which was started under the previous Liberal government, continued under the Conservative government. And that's actually, the reason it bounces around is because I mentioned before the Ontario Electricity Support Program, it's bounced between being behind the scenes rate reduction or moving on, allowing the rates to show what they really are, and having the rebate afterwards at the bottom of the bill. And then, of course, throughout the pandemic, a little bit more fluctuation with the COVID emergency rates coming in, where the off-peak rate was held for 24 hours a day, on and off, depending on how the provincial lockdowns were going and the effects that the province felt that were being felt by homeowners and small businesses. And so we just wanted to, of course, show that. And moving on, I think this is where I'll hand it off to Amy Long. Over to you, Amy.
Thanks, Rob. Good evening, Mayor Brown and the rest of council. So I'll just go over a few slides here. So our rate application for May 1st, 2021 rates was filed with the Ontario Energy Board in November of 2020 and approved by the Ontario Energy Board in March 2021. This pie chart that we're showing here shows the breakdown of a typical electric bill for a residential customer consuming approximately 750 kilowatt hours per month. The orange slice that you can see is the distribution portion, which is 21% of the bill that is considered Orangeville Hydro's portion. This is our distribution revenue. The remaining 79% of the typical residential customer's invoice are considered pass-through costs that Orangeville Hydro is required to collect on behalf of the entire electricity sector. Orangeville Hydro's distribution revenue for 2021 was $5.8 million. The 2021 distribution revenue was higher than 2020 due to an increase in approved fixed and variable rates. This pie chart shows the breakdown of our distribution revenue by customer class, showing that the residential customers provide the largest amount of distribution revenue. The total operating, maintenance, and administration expenses, which we call OM&A, amounted to $3.39 million in 2021 compared with $3.29 million in 2020. 2021 OM&A expenditures were also 4% under our budgeted expenses for 2021. Expenses were higher in 2021 due to increased labor costs with an overlap of staff for a period of the year, as well as contractor costs that we incurred to assist in completion of the distribution system plan required by the Ontario Energy Board. There was also increased tree trimming and pole testing costs to improve future reliability. In 2021, gross capital expenditures amounted to almost $2.27 million. These expenditures were 10% higher than our budgeted capital expenditures of $2.1 million. This variance was mainly due to system access work that was completed at the request of customers and developers. In 2021, our total debt was at a favorable level of 53% compared to total shareholders' equity of 47%. Debt is typically taken to finance general operating requirements as well as to fund capital expenditures and increasing regulatory variances. Orangeville Hydro has paid the town of Orangeville $20.7 million since incorporation in 2000, and the town of Grand Valley $487,000 since amalgamation in 2007. The 2021 dividend payments to shareholders were $543,000, with $513,000 paid to the town of Orangeville and $30,000 paid to the town of Grand Valley. This is a historical look at our financial statistics. So you can see on the top, the first line, our energy sales are pass-through commodity costs that are mainly paid to the IESO. They amounted to over $30 million in 2021. These pass-through costs account for 83% of our customers' electricity costs. Distribution revenue is Orangeville Hydro's revenue to fund our OM&A expenses, our capital projects, as well as our debt financing obligations. Distribution revenue in 2021 was $5.8 million. The 2021 total comprehensive income was $909,000. And then taking a look below at the capital assets line, Orangeville Hydro's assets have increased to a value of just under $23 million. Our regulated return on equity is at 9.46%, which is higher than our deemed return on equity of 9.36%. And at this point, I'll pass it back to Rob.
Yeah, Amy, in the essence of time, I want to make sure there's time for questions. If you want to just move to the reliability slides.
Sure.
So, looking back, as I mentioned, 2021 was a strong historical year for reliability stats. But of course, if anyone with an eagle eye looks at, say, Orangeville Hydro's reliability stats, which are in front of you, while trending downward over a long period of time, the last 4 years have been having a bit of, an increase, and this last year was higher than the last 4 years. So of course, we do want to speak to that. Moving to the next slide. 4 outages, 4 incidents accounted for over 80% of the outage statistics. And I just wanted to kind of mention what happens when the power goes out. So the picture on the left is showing our staff along with the Orangeville Fire Department putting out a pole fire. This is on Broadway East or Broadway West, close to Petro-Canada, where a insulator failed, started a track. Current flowing along wooden pole heats up the wood, and the wood catches fire. And so we had a pole fire, which affected, as you can see, this is a fairly heavy, it's an express feeder, the start of 2 feeders, and took out our 44 kV and a 28 kV feeder, affecting thousands and thousands of customers. And so what did we do after, got the power back on? We then looked, our line staff patrolled our entire system, found any of those insulators that existed, the twins of the failed insulator. Those have all now been replaced by our line staff or a contractor. Moving into the red dot picture, that's a picture of Grand Valley from our outage monitoring system when the power goes out in Grand Valley, affecting our approximately 1,100 customers in Grand Valley. This one was a loss of supply by Hydro One. We still don't just say, okay, it was Hydro One, our upstream provider, had an issue. What we've now implemented is there's a feeder along that goes from pretty much west of Orangeville and Amaranth, the Hydro One TS, all the way to Grand Valley. And so we've now implemented a process where if someone's driving to the Grand Valley, we patrol Hydro One's lines. So it's in addition to Hydro One maintaining their infrastructure, we also help by patrolling and inspecting it when we're traveling out to Grand Valley to hopefully catch. This was caused by failed porcelain insulators, some old insulators failing in Amaranth on the 5th Side Road. The third picture was moving into underground, where one of our pad-mounted switchgear on First Street had a failed elbow. We then sent that elbow away to a forensics lab, and they analyzed the elbow to determine the root cause of failure. We can use that now to implement material selection and changes to installation practices, as well as how can we catch these before they fail. And we're now implementing a new ultrasonic partial discharge testing, which will hopefully catch these before they fail. And moving on to our last one, it was a rainy day in September when the tree from the town of Right-of-Way fell onto our pole line. This is a tree that was right in front of the garden center on Sea Line, and knocked out the M25 feeder, affecting the west side of Orangeville that night for a little over an hour. So those 4 events, while each unique and independent of each other, did cause over 80% of the outage statistics. And so, one tree, one device, one feeder can impact a significant amount of our customers. So we did want to mention of what the cause was to the public and to council, as well as so we can also talk about what we're doing to help ensure those don't happen again. With the tree, I do have to give kudos to the town of Orangeville staff. Matt and Sarah at the town of Orangeville have been great, especially and your tree contractor, OTS, working with us to identify other suspect trees, concerned trees. And since September 2021, multiple trees that are dying or about to die have been already removed, and they've been taken down in a safe manner without affecting our infrastructure. And the last slide is just a thank you for the opportunity to speak with council tonight. And of course, thank you to our board for appointing us to speak with council tonight. 2021 was a successful year, and look forward to another successful year in 2022. Back to you, Your Worship, and we look forward to questions.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Rob. It's been a pleasure to work with you and sit on the board of Orangeville Hydro. I've learned a lot about your business. I certainly respect your leadership and the team that you work with. Focusing on reliability, these monitoring programs and testing programs that you've implemented are ensuring that we've got a high level of reliability. And of course, you've gone through a great strides on safety training of your employees, which is the other, I think, critical part of your business plan. And of course, the cost to our customers. I mean, I think I read in there we're the 14th lowest LDC in the province. And so kudos to you. We're fortunate to be in this position, owning Orangeville Hydro, and certainly the town of Grand Valley. I'm sure Mayor Solomon would concur as he sits on the board with the deputy mayor and I. But it's been very interesting. It's been a great learning curve to watch you and your team operate. It's a lean, mean fighting machine, and you guys do a great job. So with that being said, we've got Councillors Andrews and Taylor. Who was in first? Let's see. Councillor Taylor, go ahead, sir.
Nice. Beat ya, Joe. Listen, thank you very much, Mr. Coco, for your presentation. One quick comment, really appreciate when Ms. Long gets to present, always interested in those financial pieces, so grateful for that. And thank you for being here tonight. I just want to say a heartfelt, admiration for you, sir. Your ability to react when the hydro goes down, like the whole town doesn't know what what to do, right? Including yours truly. We all kind of wander around thinking, oh my God, what are we going to do? The sky's falling. And you're there with very pertinent updates. And the time frame in which you and your team are able to A, diagnose, and B, fix whatever ails the town and get us back up and running is just super, super impressive. So I think in this day and age, I think this council has valued communication, and your skills are second to none. And I just wanted to publicly recognize that and thank you and your team for that. It's very impressive. So those are my comments for tonight.
Thank you for those kind words, Councillor Taylor, and I'll be sure that those doing the real work will get absolutely the recognition they deserve. I'll make sure that those words get to their ears, and thank you very much for saying that.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Councillor Taylor. And now on to Councillor Andrews, and then we have Councillor Peters also in the queue. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, Mr. Coco and Ms. Long. Very impressed by the presentation and the documentation that you've provided. Very similar comment to Councillor Taylor. Always admire the work that you and your team do, and you have a very lean fighting machine with 20 staff that do incredible work. And I was watching some of the work that was being done on Centennial before some of the road construction, just sitting there in awe of the expertise and how they go about what they do. Two quick questions, and this is pertaining to, of course, not only 2021, but looking forward to 2022 inflationary pressures. How are you responding to some of those that are very much apparent of our world right now?
Yes, our sector is not immune to the worldwide and, of course, Canada-wide inflationary pressures that are appearing everywhere. Just some points, the transformer, those green boxes on the ground or gray cans up in the air have gone up across the board, 40%. Poles, similar. We've some parts doubling in price. And so the material that keeps the lights on, that the power flows through, is absolutely going up. And so what those costs do, this actually relates to probably a similar question that you may have asked in the past, Councillor Andrews, about looking at projects to defer. So there's a project there. When we look at our capital projects, there's some things that we have a bit more control over. We look at our dollars and our scarce resources and have to consider deferring. So we have to defer some projects, as well as, this was evident throughout the entire pandemic, of looking at ways to cut costs or look at what's really needed. And that will continue. I mean, and of course, this is one reason why when we look at one of the financial ratios that we often provide and Amy speaks to is our debt equity ratio. So when we look at the health of Orangeville Hydro, and from our regulators' perspective, the Ontario Energy Board and our debt providers, we look at our debt equity, and they're looking at our debt equity and wanting to look at a ratio of somewhat around 60-40. So in the past, we've made sure that we're able to keep below that 60-40 ratio on the good side in the event of, if a project cannot be deferred, that we have the ability to borrow and pay that debt off over the life of that infrastructure rebuild.
Thank you. I really appreciate that answer to that particular question. Very quickly, I was very impressed by the electric vehicle chargers. I think we've spoken offline about this in the past. What impact, as we see some of the the gas prices that continue to be very high, and a number of people are contemplating if they can get their hands on electric vehicles, what impact will that potentially have on your infrastructure and in preparing for some of that increased utilization?
Significant impact. So I guess without being too long-winded, if we go back roughly 10 years ago or 13 years ago, the conversation was often around solar and batteries and customers going off grid and defecting from the grid, and a term of the utility death spiral as customers start generating their own electricity and disconnecting because we're no longer needed. Fast forward to today, the exact opposite conversation is what's looking to come to fruition, of not only our customers staying connected, that across the world, the wires business is going to be significantly required, and the existing infrastructure is going to be pushed beyond its limits. So that's something that we're absolutely, from the engineering perspective and the, of course, resource financing perspective, always considering, right from ensuring our transformers in people's front yards and the subdivisions, are we monitoring them to be able to understand when they're overloaded? We now have the smart meter data. We can find out when a transformer's reaching its nameplate capacity, moving on to the bulk system, forecasting. The independent electricity system operator does provide excellent data on forecasting the growth of electrification of transportation in the province of Ontario. We're able to utilize that and sort of prorate that into our area and look at some best case, worst case scenarios on our bulk system, because it's not just the electrification of transportation we need to be concerned about. There's the growth, the intensification that's occurring in both our service areas, as well as the natural gas heating homes. If that ever becomes a target, then it's the electrification of building heat on top of it. So all of these things will have a significant impact, but moving it into a positive, one of the big drivers of a lot of this is speak of our net zero 2050 target of reducing carbon emissions. And the largest, probably the greatest problem the world is dealing with is climate change. And I heard a saying the other day that the electric grid will be the greatest solution to that largest problem. And so we need to be ready. It's not just about keeping the lights on. It's about playing a role in this huge challenge that's here now and coming at us. Not just from being able to serve the load, but again, going back to reliability with changing climate patterns and, the downbursts, tornadoes, heat waves, and ice storms, which Dufferin County has been great at keeping us informed of the changing climate patterns that are likely to hit Dufferin County in the future. We're now able to, I think just as an example, we've historically designed our systems for a ½ inch of ice and 90-kilometer-hour winds. But now, that needs to change to design a pole to withstand 120-kilometer-hour winds. And, the force is a little bit more than linear. It's almost exponential on the impact that growth has. So sorry, there might be a little bit more deep into it, but absolutely all of these things are new challenges that we need to overcome as an entire sector. We're not working alone. The Electrical Distributors Association, the Utility Standards Forum, and the CHEC Group are all, like-minded utilities working together to solve this problem together. Hydro Ottawa just felt, much of the 401 corridor, Hydro One, but Hydro Ottawa just felt a significant windstorm impact, and we've already been speaking with them in some forums about what can change in order to mitigate when that happens, not if, but when that happens next to everyone's service area.
Well, Mr. Coco, thank you so much for the detailed answer. I've learned a lot, and under your leadership, I know that we're in very good hands with Orangeville Hydro. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Peters.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you, very pleased to see the presentation. Rob, you won't be surprised that my question has to do with the net zero target. Just hoping you can clarify for ourselves and the public what the scope of that goal is. I'm assuming that encompasses operations, so you're building your fleet, the materials you procure, that kind of thing. Could you just expand briefly?
Yeah, the start of our focus, as we're, of course, learning from those that are further along in this journey, similar to the town of Orangeville, so one of those being the town of Orangeville, and of course to the county of Dufferin. Our initial focus, walk before we run, is our Scope 1 and Scope 2 corporate emissions. So that being the natural gas that we burn, the fossil fuels that we burn in our trucks and equipment, and then of course the electricity we use, which the electricity we use sort of as our own customer are the building I'm sitting in now and Amy's sitting in, and we have a building in Grand Valley and a shop in our backyard. Those 3 electric metered points and our 1 natural gas connection and the gasoline and diesel we purchase from Brian's Fuel across the street. Those are our first focus on our Scope 1 and Scope 2 corporate emissions.
Got it. Thanks.
All right, councillors, if there are no further questions, we'll thank Mr. Kokok and Ms. Long for their presentation tonight. Well done. Continued success with everything you're doing, Rob, and Orangeville Hydro's in good hands under your leadership. So thank you, and Ms. Long as well.
Thank you for your time.
Okay,
Thank you for your time. Have a great night.
All right, moving on in our agenda here to 11.3, we have Darla Fraser, CEO of Orangeville Public Library, and her A-team, which includes Tina Elric, Debbie Sheardown, and Evan Seppa, who are going to talk to us about Crossing Guard program. Ms. Fraser.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. Thank you for your time this evening, and I'm just going to take a few minutes to speak, I promise to keep it brief, about Orangeville's School Crossing Guard program. As you know, I'm Darla Fraser and I'm the CEO of the Orangeville Public Library. It has been my honor to review and refresh this vital service. We are here tonight to touch base as the program is now in its final transition from infrastructure services to community services. Tonight, I'll speak briefly to the history of the responsibility for the program, publicly thank our current supervisor. We have Evan Spezza here to demonstrate our technical enhancements. And finally, I'm honored to introduce our new supervisor who will speak to some of the plans for the future. So just quickly, going to try and share my screen here. Can you see that, sir?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Darla. Yeah.
Terrific. So it is the Ontario Highway Traffic Act that governs the rules of the road, including the operation of school crossing guards and the role of school governs crossings and the role of school crossing guards. Oh no. According to this provincial legislation, prior to the year 2000, responsibility for crossing guards lay with police services across the province. However, in 1999, Section 176 of the Highway Traffic Act was changed, transferring responsibility for funding crossing guard programs to municipalities. And across Ontario, local programs are operated by municipalities either directly within their various organizational structures or through a contract for service with either their local police or private contractors. So originally under the charge of Orangeville Police Services, the municipality of the town of Orangeville has been responsible, has been responsible for the program for the past 2 decades. In the town of Orangeville, the program was added to the responsibility of the Building and Bylaw Department back in 1999. Until new warrants are established, that policy, originally adopted in January of 2000, which was cosmetically edited in 2021, is the policy that is the guidelines that continue to guide our response to requests for additional crossing guard stations.
Excuse me, Darla.
Sure.
Are you meaning to advance the presentation? Oh,
is it not advancing, sir?
Well, there's the next page, I guess. Okay, very good.
Are you
We're
seeing?
on page 3 now. Is that where you intend to be?
Yes.
Okay, very good.
So,
thank you.
I began a review of the program in January of 2020. And you may recall at that time we were dealing with a provincial labor disruption and rotating teacher strikes. This was all approximately 60 or 70 days before Orangeville declared an emergency and the world changed with the global pandemic. Recognizing the need to connect with other municipalities to understand this program, I joined the Ontario Traffic Council's School Zone Safety Committee, and they happen to be looking for somebody in the executive, so I am the vice chair of that committee at the moment. What I did learn quickly was that this is not a simple program. It's a logistical nightmare, as each year we need more than 12,000 hours of staff time, split up between over 2 to 3 shifts per day, and that's for 195 days per year, covering 24 different stations with less than 30 guards. It all works on paper. Now, although the school closures and then the pandemic has prevented any hope of gathering good data, vehicular or pedestrian, over the past couple of years, we were able to move forward on a number of recommendations. These were the original recommendations from my review back in 2020, and we have made progress. These changes are very timely in Orangeville, as the Ontario Traffic Council is currently revising their guidelines and improving the process to develop warrants, as several municipalities are reviewing and revamping their programs. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge all the years of dedicated services this superwoman has given to this program. Debbie is unable to join us tonight, so fortunately I just do a big shout out on behalf of all the guards and, more importantly, all of the children. Your team has assisted over these past 2 decades, millions of little ones, all safer because of the Crossing Guard program and your dedication to this team. Debbie Sheardown, please accept our deepest appreciation and a big heartfelt thank you on behalf of the whole team, and especially from Tina and I. Thank you so much. I'm actually going to, the town is blessed with many strong employees, and it's my pleasure to introduce Evan Seppa, our GIS technician, otherwise known as a magician, to demonstrate some of our program enhancements. However, I think in the for time, I don't know whether, Evan, we're going to be able to do the demo.
I think I'm going to implore everybody to perhaps experience it on their own time. I think to save a little bit of time here. So yeah, several years ago, good evening, everyone. Several years ago, the town utilized GIS, and myself working with Debbie Sheardown, we utilized GIS to improve the management of crossing guards records. So staff would manage all the crossing guard related information in one structured GIS application. And as a result, the public can access a simplified public application for reference. You can see a screenshot there in the bottom left corner of this slide here. This application, it shows users all of the educational facilities around town and the crossing guard locations and details of times and stuff like that. It even provides us sidewalk and street signage infrastructure in the area. So it's a holistic picture of what's our crossing guard program. Since originally employing GIS for this purpose, we have added instant summary pages, which allows staff to export complete details of any given intersection in a presentation ready format. And currently we're in the middle of revamping the crossing guards records once again, adding further details as well as pictures and profiles of the guards. And what this will do is allow us to create additional public references so that we can properly showcase our amazing team of crossing guards who keep our community safe. If you're going to remember anything I said, we have exceptional data management in this project. We're continuing to improve the depth of information that we're tracking. And we have existing public references, but they're also going to be improved very soon with guard profiles for the public to enjoy. So, of course, all of this is available with many other data-driven applications on the Data Orange website, and I encourage everybody to take a look at it both now and later when we launch some new features. Pass it back to you, Dollar.
Thank you so much, Evan. As you know, Evan and his team are a wonderful resource, and we will continue to work with them as we continue to work with Human Resources to bring the guards, tuck them in a little closer to the town. I'm now thrilled to introduce our new supervisor for Community Services, Crossing Guard Program, Mrs. Tina Elrick. Many of you may know Tina from the community. Tina?
Thank you, Darla, and good evening. I would like to first acknowledge our 28 incredible and dedicated crossing guards. Since the beginning of April, I've had the pleasure to meet each and every one of them at their crossing guard stations numerous times. They are out in our community every school day, regardless of the weather, ensuring the safe travel of all of our students to and from school with smiles and positive interactions with everyone they service. I've quickly discovered that this team of individuals are highly dedicated and committed to making a difference in our community. As Evan has explained, our crossing guards are covering 24 crossing guard stations around town. Based on our counts completed just last week, this very dedicated team are ensuring the safe walk to and from school to more than 15,000 students weekly. As you may have seen in references in past reports, the 4 E's to road safety. Please note that there is actually 5 E's to road safety: education, encouragement, enforcement, engineering, and evaluation. Moving forward, I will be concentrating on these 5 E's to help support the town of Orangeville's goal to ensuring road safety through a comprehensive, inclusive, and sustainable approach to ensure students' safe travel to and from school. Finally, I am very excited to be in this role and look forward to helping to continue to support and make an impact in road safety for the students who walk to and from school and encourage involvement and a safe, engaged, and healthy community throughout Orangeville. And I
Thanks
think
very much.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, Tina. As you can see, Community Services has big plans for the future as we work to recalibrate and modernize the scope and the administration of this vital program. And I look forward to bringing further recommendations forward to Council.
Very good. Thank you, Darla, Evan, and Tina. Tina, looks like you're up to the challenge. You've got some big shoes to fill there, taking over for Debbie, but I'm sure you're going to do a fantastic job. So thank you. Councillors, any questions or comments? No, it was a great presentation, Darla. Thank you. Oh, Councillor Taylor, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Through you to Ms. Fraser. I'm just curious. I know we're having a labor shortage, and it's such an important position. What do you do currently when people are sick or we don't have supply? Do you have extras that you're calling? Or I've often wondered. I've never seen a gap, but clearly there must be one at times.
It is through you, Your Honor, Your Worship, to Councillor Taylor. Like I said, it's a logistical nightmare in that it all works on paper, the schedule, but you factor in, some 30 individuals and you have all those lives interrupting schedules. So that has been Debbie's role and will be Tina's role in moving guards around. Yes, we do have some spares, but we are always looking for more guards. And so if anybody's interested in becoming a guard in their next life, or if they know somebody who might enjoy that, it's not for everybody. It's not a job that's for the faint of heart, but those who do it and love it really find great joy in it. So.
Very good. All right. Thank you again, Darla, Tina, and Evan for your presentation tonight, and look forward to seeing you there out on street corners around town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to our next presentation. We have Frank Alimo. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Mr. Is it Alimo or Alimo? Are you with us, Frank?
Alimo.
Alimo, very good. All right, well, thank you for joining us. You're going to give us a presentation on the Orangeville Fire Station, so go right ahead, sir.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Brown, for the introduction. Good evening, Mayor Brown and members of council and all present for this council meeting. My name is Frank Alaimo. I am the principal and architect of Alaimo Architecture, Inc. I have over 25 years of architectural experience with 21 fire stations designed and built in my career within the province of Ontario. Over the past, I guess, 2 decades, my office has focused primarily on the design of emergency service facilities, namely fire stations and EMS stations. Most recently, I guess with the pandemic in mind, time-wise, our office completed Innisfil Fire Station number 5 back in December of 2021, January of 2020. This station is in the Friday Harbor precinct at Big Bay Point. That same year, our office also completed Mississauga Fire Station 120 on Eglinton Road prior to the pandemic. During the pandemic, our office has also been working on and off and then on again 2 fire stations for the town of New Tecumseh. The first was a renovation of their existing fire station on Mill Street in Tottenham, of a complete sort of gut job of the existing fire station of 7,500 square feet, completely renovated with a new apparatus bay of about 2,500 square feet. The second station was a new build of about 14,000 square feet, 3-bay drive-through on the 14th line in Palliston. So we were a little bit busy on and off during the pandemic. But as you can understand, 2 years of uncertainty, these projects and other fire station projects were put on hold and then restarted. But I can sort of attest that I see the light at the end of the pandemic tunnel, and it looks like these fire stations and others will be going forward shortly this year for tender and then to immediate construction. As fire stations, as we all know, are a necessary part of the fabric of any community. And like New Tecumseh has said, it completes their town. Now, I'd like to sort of speak on the Orangeville Fire Station. Our office was retained back at the end of 2021, and we've spent the last several months from December 2021 to the end of April developing, refining the program for the new fire station, with a lot of input from staff, town staff, and from the fire department, namely Chief Ron Morden. Based on my extensive experience with the design of fire station facilities throughout the province of Ontario, from Windsor to the west, all the way to Greater Napanee to the east, and as far north as Innisfil, we've collectively, when I say we, the team, Orangeville staff and my consultant team had developed a functional program for the new Orangeville Fire Station. As you can see from the project design program included in the report to council, we have deconstructed and reconstructed all the necessary rooms and spaces into a clear and concise outline with square footages. No excess, no waste. The resulting floor plan, which I'll go through with this intro, for the new Orangeville Fire Station has been developed based on the site, which is site conditions, which is at the corner of Centennial and Commerce Road, a site chosen by the municipality, and the final programming requirements developed over the last couple of months. The final floor plan is a functionally organized fire station with all component parts where they need to be for the master plan of this fire station. We have designed this fire station not only to meet the immediate needs of the fire department, but we also have allowed for future growth in the facility within the master planning, the overall master planning, so that the building and the layout can be expanded if necessary, thereby providing Orangeville with a fire station for the next 50 to 60 years. I also wanted to add, our design for the new Orangeville Fire Station is based on best practices, a functional laid out program that meets and exceeds NFPA, the National Fire Protection Association, requirements for the design of fire station. And this new building will incorporate sustainable design methods and materials. I will briefly go through and I'll share my screen through the design program, which has been submitted to council. And I'll just share. And I'm just going to share. Can everyone see that?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, so I'm just going to start. This is what we've developed over the last several months as what we call a project design program. It outlines the program requirements, the room and room areas required for a fire station, the spatial requirements for those, and then we also had a column here that based on the development of the programming, staff had certain requirements for us in the fire department. So we tried to meet all the objectives. So I'll briefly go through. We went through room by room, item by item. I don't want to bore everybody here. The building will also have a universal and barrier-free washroom. So the building will be OADA compliant and meet all the requirements for the entire facility, even though the facility is on 2 levels. As I go through the programming, there's rooms that are associated to the fire department, to the administration, and to several of the other supportive functions for the apparatus bay, which houses the fire trucks. I won't go through these in detail, and I'll briefly go through the plan and how it got laid out. One of the important things for this fire station is that this building will be an emergency operations center. It will have emergency power and emergency generator for that need. When we completed the entire programming for the fire station, we came up with a square footage based on the layout and the floor plan that I'll present of approximately 29,000 square feet. This was a little bit over the expectations from staff, but as I mentioned to you before, there was no waste and no excess to the station. We laid it out accordingly to meet the requirements of staff. So I'm just going to close this. Is this? So I'm going to go between the floor plan and the site plan. I'll briefly go through the site plan for the fire station and its sort of orientation. North is to the top of the page. Centennial Road goes east-west, and then Commerce goes somewhat north-south. We've developed the concept for the fire station to address the streets. Yep. Can you all see that?
No.
No? Did I not share that?
Still seeing the program.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're just seeing the PDF still.
All right, let me see why I didn't share Windows. And, oh, here we go. I apologize for that. I thought it was open. Can you now see the site plan?
See the site plan now, yes.
Sorry. Okay, I'll briefly go through. So once again, I have Centennial running east-west and Commerce running north-south. We developed it as a corner building, being this is a municipal property. I wanted to address the significance and the importance of being on a corner. So the fire station is developed with that in mind. There are 2 sort of components, and I'll go through the floor plan, but there's the fire station and its supportive living quarters, the emergency operations center and the training room, and then the fire administration. As we developed the site plan, part of the programming was to incorporate an outside training area and a gravel area for the firefighters. So we've also incorporated that. As I go through the floor plan, I just want to sort of zoom in on certain areas of the building, just to explain to council how we've laid it out. The civic address of the fire station can be either Centennial or Commerce, but the primary entrance for the general public and administrative staff will be off of Commerce, with visitor and handicap and barrier-free parking at the front of the building within close proximity of the main entrance, and then with staff parking to the south of the building. As we develop the programming for we'll call it the administrative portion, we also develop the programming for the fire station. As you can see, the primary function of any fire station is the safe egress of fire trucks onto the adjacent road. Also, we've taken into consideration the limiting distance to the property line so that a fire truck can emerge from the building without hesitation, have his points of reference, and turn left, right, depending on the apparatus bay the truck is coming out of. We also developed the site plan in concert with Triton Engineering, which is my understanding is developing the road design for Centennial. So there's been a lot of collaboration between our office, our engineering team, and Triton Engineer so that we can make this fire station and these egress driveways onto Centennial work according to their geodetic grades. As part of any fire station, there is a return driveway and an access driveway for firefighters and their associated parking. So for full-time and for part-time and for full-time staff, we have associated parking for the volunteers, and we have full-time parking at the back of the station for the full-time crew. The primary entrance for the crew is through the main corridor entrance east, which I'll go through in the floor plan, and it's been systematically organized so that the crew know what to do, grab their gear, and set up for the call. Just now going to switch, and hopefully I can do this correctly. I'm going to share. Here we go. Everyone see the floor plan, the colored floor plan?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. So as I mentioned to you before, I've turned our drawing around, the color drawing, to sort of orient to sort of match the site plan. Centennial is here, Commerce is here. So I'll just go through the various components of the fire station, which was developed over several months. We've split it up into what I would call 5 zones, and I'll go through each of the zones briefly. I don't want to bore everybody, but there's an administration, which is the orange tinted color, a community engagement area in the lilac, the emergency operation and training in the green, and then we'll call it the fire administrative, and we'll call it living quarters for the fire station in yellow, and then what I would call the apparatus bay of the fire station proper for the housing of the fire vehicles and their supportive rooms. So I'll just briefly go through how we design this building. As I mentioned, we will develop this fire station as we have all fire stations. Our office has been recognized in the past for designing, we were the first to design the first LEED Gold fire station, and since then we've designed 2 other LEED Gold fire stations, so we actually have 3. So we've taken those principles, and with the understanding that the municipality is looking for an energy efficient, sustainable design, we are taking those previously learned lessons through LEEDs that we've done and incorporate into this building. And my understanding, if council adopts and approves the net zero portion, that'll add another layer to the overall design of this fire station. So in simple terms, the administrative area has been designed so that all occupiable areas are on the perimeter to allow for ventilation and natural daylighting. And then the center cores are developed as the service for those spaces, such as washrooms and storage room, which don't necessarily require daylighting and are more a mechanical controlled environment. So that's the administrative section of the fire department, which houses the administration, some file storage, training offices, duty office, duty fire chief's office, the fire chief's office, a small boardroom, some shared fire prevention space, the fire prevention office, and a small kitchenette, with also room for file storage. The primary entrance into this building will sort of be the key component, which is the main vestibule and entrance here, which will become a connector not only to the administration, to the community engagement area, which I'll explain, to the EOC and training room, but also it leads to the yellow area, which is the fire station proper in here, through access through there. So I'll briefly go through one of the components. The community engagement area was designed in and part of the fire station. It will house a Bickle fire truck and provide a room for community engagement, for displays, for gatherings, for awards, and that has been incorporated into as part of the main fire station building. It also has access from the exterior and also a means of egress as well. But the primary fire station has been designed with two main hallways, one for the administration access and also to access the EOC. There is, as I mentioned to you, this building has been completely designed to meet AODA requirements. So because of the level change from the upper portion, which is the green, lilac, and orange area, to the lower portion, which is in red and yellow, there's almost a 2-meter grade difference. We have provided, we'll call it a barrier-free access and a ramp system to get you down to the lower level. This building will be accommodated with universal washrooms for the general public and also for staff who are on desk duties and require a wheelchair access. The EOC area and training rooms have been designed as either one space or to be split in two as a training room A and B, with their supportive storage rooms, washrooms, and communication and secondary storage rooms. The access from the fire department in yellow, the living quarters, to the EOC can either be way of the secondary staircase or leading back up through the ramp and into the training rooms. This facility is also contains what I would call a sliding pole. So it provides, if training staff are in here and are called on to a call, they will have access for immediately getting down to the yellow area, which is the primary sort of living quarters, and have access to the apparatus bay and can slide down the pole, which is only 2-meter difference from the upper level to the lower. As I mentioned before, learning from the LEED design, all the perimeter spaces, which is the kitchen area, a day room, fitness room, and the captain's office, dormitories, and duty watch are on the perimeter to provide, like I mentioned before, with the administration office, daylighting and natural ventilation with operable windows. And then the center core has been developed as the shared washroom and locker room with independent washrooms, 4 independent washrooms based on the 4 count of the fire department per shift, a laundry room off the main corridor, and then dormitories, 4 sets of dormitories, double accommodations to also accommodate the 4-on-4 shift. A janitor's room has been designed into this facility to provide general maintenance of the living quarters. As I zoom out, as I mentioned, there is no waste and no excess to the station. We've accommodated the kitchen to meet the requirements of the fire department staff, a day room for TV watching and general training, and a fitness room to meet the requirements of the fitness regime provided by the fire department. The captain's office is separate from the sleeping quarters of the regular staff because the captain typically has reporting, writing duties, and he has his own office for meetings as well, with his own private washroom and his dormitory. As I zoom into what I call the duty watch, this becomes the central focus and the center point and the collection point between the apparatus bay and staff within the living quarters. This is also the point where staff, if I zoom out here, as I mentioned before, volunteer staff parking is along the side, north-south. This is their primary access point in through corridor 3. They grab their gear, set up in front of the truck associated to which apparatus bay they've been assigned, and then report for duty in the duty watch, get their assignments, and then report for duty once they're called in. This fire station is what I call a drive-through fire station. So there's one access at the back for returning vehicles and the means of egress and the primary egress for the fire trucks on the north side of the building. This is a 4-bay fire station, double deep with Ecom bay. So this is very important under NFPA requirements. There is not only a requirement for the decommissioning of contaminants within a fire truck, but there's also a requirement for decontamination of the person or the firefighter returning back from a fire. So the way this building is designed, there's a decom bay here. The fire truck comes in, gets washed down, scrubbed down. Once it's cleaned, it comes out of the bay and gets set up in the appropriate apparatus. As I mentioned, as part of NFPA, one of the requirements is to have returning firefighters come back and decom their bodies. There is what I would call a decom shower, a pass-through for soiled gear, and then they move on to grabbing their clothes within a locker and then do proper cleaning in the washroom and shower area with their own civilian clothes. So that is a standard procedure under NFPA to decom the firefighters returning. That's very crucial. It's sort of what they call the hot and cold area. So this is, we'll call it, and you don't want contamination to go from one side to the other. So returning firefighters go through this process and into a clean zone. The gear wash area or room is for the washing of soiled firefighter gear. There's a gear washing and gear drying racks. Once they're washed and decommed, they're returned back to the gear storage room for their next cycle. The fire departments, there was a requirement to have any firefighters in, we'll call it the red zone. If they need the facilities or to go to a washroom, there is a facility within the red zone, and not having them cross back into the yellow zone for cross-contamination reasons. As part of any fire department and any fire station, there are requirements for the SCBA storage and bottle filling station and a compressor room, which is on the outside and is very noisy. So that
Mr. Limo?
Yes.
Mr. Limo, we've got a crazy busy agenda tonight.
Okay.
I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm wondering if you could wrap up your discussion within the next couple of minutes. Mr. Osmond is going to be giving a presentation, a staff report a little bit later. I'm sure you're going to be remaining for that. And we'll have lots of questions maybe after the staff report's delivered. But if you could try and wrap yours up now.
I'll wrap it up within 1 minute. Yeah, I was basically almost done. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir.
As I mentioned, all the areas on this side are to support the apparatus bay. And I just wanted to sort of identify this station will have a hose tower, which will be a dual purpose hose tower and training tower with the supporting general purpose PPE and uniform storage, medical storage, and agent storage rooms. I think I can bring my presentation to a close. Hopefully I haven't bored everybody, but I'm
well, not at all. In fact, I'm I'm very interested in all of what you've said, and I'm sure the council is as well, and all staff listening in. It's been very interesting and comprehensive. So thank you for sharing all of that with us.
Thank you.
All right. Council, I'm just going to ask if we can hold off on questions until after Mr. Osmond's presentation on the staff reports. And I do need to apologize to Mr. Cardy. I ran right through Mr. Cardy's presentation, so we'll bring Mr. Cardy on in a minute here. We've also under 11.2, of course, we had a recommendation that the Ontario Hydro 2021 annual report be received, and that council appoint Sandy Brown as proxy and Andy McIntosh as proxy in the absence of Sandy Brown to attend and to vote for the corporation of the town of Orangeville at the annual shareholders meeting to be held on June 22nd, 2022, and at any adjournments thereof, revoking any proxy previously given, and that council approve and direct such proxy to vote in favor of the proposed resolutions listed in the Ontario Hydro Limited agenda for the annual shareholders meeting scheduled for June 22nd, 2022, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the proxy resolution for the annual shareholders meeting of Orangeville Hydro Limited. Could we have a motion on that recommendation, please? Councillor Andrews, second by Councillor Sherwood. All in favor? All right. Thank you. Again, I thank you, Mr. Limo. We're going to jump over or backwards now to Mr. Joel Cardy, President of Diameter Services. My apologies, Mr. Cardy. I did jump ahead of you in the agenda, and over to you, sir.
No problem at all. Just going to have Kyle present. And I will talk to the presentation.
Very good. We can see it now. You're muted, Mr. Cardy.
I'm on mute.
Yes, you're still on mute, Mr. Cardy.
If there's no echo.
There you go. There you go.
Perfect. So today I'm going to present. Sorry, we're just doing some technical difficulties.
Mm-hmm.
I'm turn your speakers off. There we go. So tonight, thank you very much. We will. I'll be presenting the Advanced Metering Infrastructure and Water Meter Replacement Project update. What we'll touch on today is we'll do real quick intros. I'm gonna skip through that. I'll review the recommendation that's before the council. We'll do a real quick technology overview on what the technology is that we're recommending and moving forward with, what our approach was, and how that technology aligns strategically to the town's strategic direction. We'll provide a project timelines, talk a little bit about how the public will be engaged in the project, and we'll finish with the total project cost and some of the financial implications. So the town has, just to provide some background, the town has about 10,000 water meters. They're read manually on a monthly basis, so it's a very labor-intensive process. Currently, a significant percentage of the meters are reaching the end of their useful life. Also, the technology those water meters have is considered a low-resolution technology, which really doesn't support building or implementing an AMI technology. So based on the meters that are out there now, you're unable to provide timely water consumption data to do more than just use those readings for billing purposes. So the recommendation in this presentation is for council to approve the additional funding of $2 million, which 50% of it comes from OCIF provincial grant and 50% of it comes from the Water Reserve Fund. And that additional funding would go toward the water meter replacement and advanced metering infrastructure project that has been planned. So what are we talking about? The technology we're talking about is called Advanced Metering Infrastructure, or AMI technology. Currently, the town reads their water meters manually. A person visits each property, touches the device on the outside of the property, which transfers a single meter reading to a handheld. This reading is transferred to Orangeville Hydro and is used for billing purposes only. The technology being considered would add a small battery-powered radio transmitter to the outside of the property, connected to the water meter, to the new water meter, via wire. These small devices will communicate to a fixed network, which will pass all of the data to new software applications. This technology will actually produce about 720 hourly reads per month. AMI technology requires additional software to transfer that data into the usable information, and the information will be used to eliminate manual reading, making reading and billing more reliable and efficient. This data will also be used to provide homeowners with the ability to better understand their consumption and potentially set up alerts and notifications that allows customers to change their consumption behavior before they get a large water bill. Now, the process that we've gone through, so the project team was established and comprised of town staff, but also Orangeville Hydro. And we had staff from infrastructure services, IT services, customer service and billing, communications, finance, and asset management. The project of this nature usually goes through several phases, and we've completed the design phase, as you see here on the graph. The design phase is really the project planning phase. During this phase, we completed 10 tasks with the town's project team. We wanted to ensure that the town's or the needs of the town were fully understood, and the town has that clear understanding of the available technologies to them. Identify any system implications and the resourcing required to make the project successful. Once approved, the project team will move into the procurement phase of the project, where technology and service providers will submit proposals through a competitive RFP process on their AMI solutions. Once an AMI technology is and a contractor is selected, the project would go through a startup, a proof of concept, where ultimately the solution is proven, and then it would move into a full installation phase of the project. Now, the benefits of this AMI technology, it has a number of detailed benefits, which we'll talk about a little later, but the main benefit comes from a few high-level concepts. First, AMI technology improves timeliness of data. What this means is, instead of waiting for the end of the month to obtain a single read, meter readings are collected every single day before they're needed, before the billing process would require them. Also, the data is more granular. And what this means is, instead of just a single read per day or per month, the town will be collecting hourly consumption for all data. And what this would allow is the town to use this data for more than just water billing. Customer service, distribution management, and operational efficiencies are all improvements that the town can expect. The AMI technology was recommended for both the financial and the non-financial benefits. Often the latter benefits are a major driver for these types of projects. Now, when we initially did the design, what we wanted to look at is what are the town's strategic goals. We wanted to make sure that the project aligned to the outcomes of the project with the strategic direction of the town. So we incorporated both the strategic action plan that was developed in 2017 and the updated progress report that was published in 2020. So I'll just highlight a couple areas that that this project aligns well with these documents. One, on the municipal service, the AMI contributes to an objective that services will be effective and efficient and delivered with a focus on customer service. This type of technology does that very well. Economic vitality. To successfully promote business development, retention, and expansion, the town must be able to provide appropriate water service. The opportunity for AMI to better promote conservation, understand peak water demand, and reduce distribution system losses provides the town with an opportunity to move forward with some of these new initiatives. Lastly, sustainable infrastructure. The data the AMI system provides will help the town implement long-term servicing strategy for both supply and sewage treatment. As we went through the design phase, our team worked with the town and went through 37 different business drivers that represent improvements to the way the water utility operates today. Some business drivers have financial benefits, while others have non-financial benefits. These drivers are spread out across 6 categories, as you can see here in the half circle. We reviewed these business drivers with the team and found that 22 of them were either important or critical for the town moving forward. Focusing on these 22 business drivers, we found that 20 were fully supported by AMI technology, and 2 of them were partially. For this reason, we concluded that AMI technology was the best fit for the town moving forward. So, what are some of the areas that the town can expect? One, on the distribution side. So on the distribution system, there is the project and the technology being implemented will reduce non-revenue water, which is water unaccounted for in the system. It'll have a better understanding of water loss, when and where that water is being lost, and it'll support any conservation initiatives in the future. There'll be some operational improvements, which is reduce operational costs through reduction of water credits, which are large bills that you need to provide a credit back to the customer due to a leak on their side of the meter. Stop meters and manual meter reading will again reduce the overall cost. Reduced need for staff to enter private property. And there'll be customer service improvements. Ability to provide hourly water usage data, alerts and alarms, and improve customer communication about their water consumption behaviors. So I'll go into sort of the next level of some of the benefits. The benefits of this technology on the customer side include advanced leak detection algorithms that'll alert customers even before getting a high water bill. Hourly consumption information can be provided to the customers to understand their consumption behavior and make adjustments to that behavior to reduce their water bill. It will reduce the number of water estimates because fewer readings will be missed due to dogs or access issues or weather issues. There's also benefits on the utility side. There will be operational improvements like reduced rereads, reduced estimates, and it'll allow for same-day final meter readings much more efficiently. It'll eliminate manual meter reading costs, improve reader safety, and make those who make the reading process much more reliable and efficient. So from a timeline perspective, we've completed phase 1 of the project, which is the design. And if the council approves moving forward, then we would move into phase 2, which is a procurement activity. We expect that activity to take between now and the end of the year. Once the that procurement is completed and a contractor is selected, we would move into a startup phase, which is engaging not only Orangeville Hydro, but also the town and the contractor staff. Diameter would support that process, and there would be a startup, about a 4 or 5 month startup process. That proof of concept would last till about July of 2023, and the installation portion, which is completing the remaining installations across all services across the town, would be complete around end of February or March 2024. Now, the public outreach is critical to this type of project. So the public support is fundamental for the success of it. During the startup phase, we'll develop a project engagement plan that will be developed in conjunction with the installation contractor. The goal of the plan will be to one, successfully generate appointments, so make customers feel comfortable that the installers need access to the property to perform the work, and encourage customers to book appointments. Secondly, it'll promote some of the additional benefits that the project will provide long term. You'll see here we're going to go through a standard 5-step process. It'll start with an introductory letter. It'll have the installer will drop off a 3 or a trifold booklet. There'll be a number of reminder letters, door knockers, and phone calls. And then finally, there'll be a final notice. We will also have adjustments or updates to the website and a open house, which customers are able to enter or attend at the beginning of the project and ask any questions that they may have. Now, a project of this nature will have some challenges. We have included provisions for some of these challenges. We should emphasize that these challenges will have a very low occurrence, but we've planned for them. So things like building control valve replacement, poor plumbing, or carpentry that may be needed to access the water meter or the wire run. We also understand that the curb stops will also need to be accessed, so we've allowed for some provisions to support that process too. The total capital cost is expected to be $5.7 million, which includes the installation and supply of the meters, the AMI network, our project management services, some internal project support costs, and integration with the existing Orangeville Hydro billing system. We have allowed for some contingency. Now there has been some discussion around Orangeville Hydro continuing to bill and collect for the water customers. That continues to be the case. The town is thinking of doing a transitioning plan, but that is outside of this project. So the financial implications, the town originally planned for $4.3 million to do this project. Based on sort of the design and the market factors that are currently at play, it's anticipated that additional funding of anywhere from 1.1 to 1.75 million would be required, which is why we're making the recommendation to allocate $2 million in additional funding to support the project over the 4.3 million. Now, I think Rob earlier today in the presentation talked about some of the supply challenges. This project definitely has some uncertainty in the market, not because it's a new technology, but we're seeing some risk on the supply chain across the market. So that's why we've allowed for some higher contingency. Any unspent funds would be returned to the reserve when the project is complete. And as I mentioned earlier, they've identified areas that would finance the project. So this is my last slide here. So in conclusion, the AMI technology and the meter replacement will empower residents and businesses to understand their water usage and take steps to conserve water. It'll enable the town to increase customer service, help customers avoid unnecessary large bills, and better understand customer inquiries. Ultimately, it'll enable the town to continue to achieve many of the goals outlined in their strategic plan. So that's all I had. And now I'm very open to any questions you may have.
Right. Mr. Cardy, thank you very much. Okay, let's go with Councillor Taylor and then Councillor Andrews. Go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. Cardy. Sound like I've got an echo here as well. Oh, that's great. Thank you, sir. An observation, then questions, if I could. I greatly appreciated how you linked your initiative to the strategic plan of the town of Orangeville. It was very simple, and really that's the guiding document. So that was helpful for me. So thank you very much. The two questions are. One is, and I maybe just don't understand, but I'm thinking about the implementation of it and the wiring. So I assume you would dig along properties, and most of these apparatuses, in my view, are probably in the backyard of homes. So it would be a bit awkward in some homes. Like I'm thinking of my own, it would be hard to dig and put in a system because of just landscaping and whatnot. So that's one question. And then the other one is pertaining to, you talked about the ability to not tinker. And although fraud in our town, I would imagine, is low, hard to prove, I do know that some are, making arrangements to ensure that they're maybe not paying. Can you elaborate on that and how that would work? Thank you.
Sure. So on the first question, no, there's no digging required. The water meter itself is actually installed in your basement. I actually know it because I was a part of the very first project, the universal metering project, 17 years ago when they were installed. So what happens is the water meter is installed in the basement. A wire is run from that water meter to an outside small black touchpad currently. What we're going to be doing is we're going to replace the water meter in the basement, and we're going to install a radio transmitter on the existing wire on the outside of the property. So that's the first question. So no digging is required at all to do this work. The only type of digging that might be needed would be, less than 1%, and it's all around the curb stop. So second question was related to tampering. So with a monthly read, tampering is difficult to pick up, but AMI consumption data, because you have hourly consumption data, let's say you have a customer, maybe it's a larger customer that has a bypass. Right now, if they had a process where they turned off that bypass, turned on the bypass, once a day, every day, there would be nothing really, you wouldn't be able to detect it. With this type of consumption data, because it's hourly, you would be able to see abnormalities in the consumption behavior. And it would then allow you to detect or investigate some of those abnormalities. That didn't come out right, but I think you know what I'm saying. And you would be able to investigate. As well, let's say you find a customer that did tamper. You would be able to put them on a watch list and specifically be able to watch to see if their consumption behavior, went to zero.
Thank you, Mr. Cardy. Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, Mr. Cardy. Very appreciative of the information that was found in this document, as well as the staff report. A lot of information to, of course, absorb. But at the same time, I can see the critical path that has been outlined, and very much enthused by what I see here. Again, I'm one of those recipients too that I guess was maybe 17, 18 years ago. We have our water meter here, and I know that the individual that drops by, whenever they do drop by, they get the report, and accuracy is what it is. But one thing that I'm very impressed about with the AMI technology is the improved accuracy, which is really, really important, and the benefit comes back to the town. The question I have is, in fact, pertaining to that installation. Very quickly, again, for those members of our community that may be wondering what and how this will be, implemented, would an existing wire that already is, for example, in my home, I thought when you ended up answering Councillor Taylor's comment and question, the existing wire that would be on that meter would remain, or would a new wire have to be installed?
Yeah, so the existing wires that were installed 16, 17 years ago were 22 gauge 3 conductor wires. So those wires are perfectly fine. So in a very small number of cases, you might need to replace the wire because there's a staple through it or there's damage to it. But on the whole, our assumption is you'll be able to use the existing wire.
Excellent. And one other quick comment regarding the communications plan. I was also very happy to see the importance of a clear communications plan to our community, and the members of, approximately 10,000 meters would be installed over a period of time. You highlighted very quickly also the supply chain issues. Again, it's only speculation looking at the infamous supply chain crystal ball. You have a critical path that is outlined, but at the same time, do you speculate that there could be a delay, pushing some of that installation a little bit further back, depending on the ebbs and flows of the supply chain?
Yeah, so these types of projects is all my business does. So we've probably got 12 projects on the go currently. Not all of them are being impacted. Certain manufacturers don't appear to be impacted, but just because they're not impacted now doesn't mean they won't be impacted later. So we're continuing to hear more and more of various different manufacturers having challenges with supply. So, I think that the timeline is definitely of risk. Once you go through the procurement process and you have some honest discussions with the contractor, and if ultimately there is that risk based on the best solution that you've chosen, then the town will have to make some decisions on how we can address those risks, either delay the project or do it over a longer period of time. But it really depends on the contractor that gets selected, the products being impacted at that time. So it's a tough one because it's not like it's isolated to one single vendor.
Thank you for that candid response, Mr. Carty. Thank you.
Councillor Taylor, do you have another question?
I do, sir. If I may, just real quickly, through yourself to, I think it'd be Mr. Koslak. Whenever I hear about things needing to be installed in people's homes, there's always going to be a group of people who don't want other people in their homes. And I'm just wondering what the plan would be. Would we cease to supply water? Would there, what would we do to have 100% implementation, which is what we'd require here, if I could?
Sure. Through your worship, there are a number of options. We do anticipate that for the most part, residents will accept the meter. Currently there's well under 1% of households don't have a meter. It's something like 1/10 of 1%, so it's very, very small, which means that the existing homes have them. So there's a couple of mechanisms. The ability to pass a bylaw or to turn off the water is always available to us. There's also a mechanism in the water rate bylaw that if an individual refuses the meter, they go on a flat rate, and the flat rate is double what the sort of the normal flat rate is in the water rate bylaw. So my recommendation to council would be simply we take this in a stepwise approach. We look for as much voluntary uptake as we can. The hammer gets bigger when we go to sort of a double flat rate, and sincerely, if the uptake isn't enough, and I don't anticipate this to be a problem, but if that's the case, then council has the option to take further measures up to and including shutting off water. My sincere hope would be that we would never have to get to that point, but other municipalities have, and it's certainly a tool in our tool belt.
Thank you, Mr. Koslick. Thank you, Councillor Taylor. All right, there's no further questions. I think we should move on to staff reports, but before we do that, I'm wondering if we should take a 5-minute break, and we'll see you in a few minutes, folks. the progressive municipalities are doing, and that's upgrading. So been very interesting so far to hear these presentations. As we move on to staff reports now, 12.1. So let me read this. This is a recommendation that reports CMS 2022-04, fire station design and capital funding be received, and that Council approved the proposed fire station floor plan, which contains a total of 2,661.61 square meters, or 28,649.33 square feet of operational space. And the council approved the fire station site plan, which is situated on 3.6825 acres, or 14,902.51 square meters, parcel of land on the corner of Centennial Road and Commerce Road. And the staff be directed to prepare application for capital funding in the amount of $4 million from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Green Municipal Fund Program to design and construct the fire station to net zero standards. And the council directs staff to include additional funding in the projected amount of $5 million in the 2023 to 2024 capital budgets to cover the cost of the fire station. I'm going to welcome Mr. Osmond. Mr. Osmond, if you could speak to this report, sir, and then we'll have further questions from council.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, council. Quite a report. I have to say up front that it's been a challenging time with this report and with the process. It's a long, drawn-out process. It's kind of complex in the sense of the type of building that you're constructing. Probably one of the first buildings of this magnitude has been designed and to be constructed since the wastewater plant, or certainly the Alder Recreation Complex. So it is extensive. It's taken a lot of iterations, not just in the design, but also in the report itself, trying to pinpoint the things that we want to make sure that council is totally informed on. But really, when it comes down to it, end of the day, is that we're looking at a project that's in a time frame right now in our environment where it's getting impacted not just by increase in size for all kinds of different reasons from our initial master plan in 2015, but also by the market that we're currently all living in. And I know that the Treasurer's report on inflation is a little to the bottom of the report list. But if council had an opportunity to go through that, I'd like to keep that in the back of your mind as we approach the fire station review. As Mr. Elamo pointed out, the actual design of the fire station involved all the firefighters and the fire team, administrative, fire chief, and so on and so forth. And I want to say kudos and thank you to all the fire team, because they were involved right from day one. A lot of research, a lot of surveys, and so on and so forth, hands-on on what we do in fire. And it was really great to have all their input in the overall design, which hopefully informed the outcome. As we all know, of course, we do have a fire station that's currently 9,000 square feet. And the current fire station, and we all know in the master plan as pointed out, and time itself has pointed out over the last number of years, that is certainly, we've certainly outgrown it. And it is, of course, currently existing on a floodplain, and we're not in a position to expand it for all sorts of reasons, and I don't need to go into that. The council is very informed on that. But in terms of the actual fire station design that we have today, one of the things I want to keep in mind, and I think it was also alluded to earlier, is that we try to design here a very sustainable space. And it is got LEED certified features. It's got net zero features. But you need to keep in mind that this building is not totally net zero. The idea of applying for $4 million for net zero would be to up our game, if you would, and really enhance the design more than it is right now. But again, the way we've done that is we're saying to council, if we don't get the $4 million, we don't go to the next level. We keep it at some of the net zero features we have now, the LEED features we have now, and that's a point where $15 million, if you would, if that becomes the number, would be where we kind of draw the line. So overall, when you look at this overall design, I think it was mentioned hot side, or whatever the case would be, and I've introduced you to the dirty side and the clean side. And dirty side is the contaminated side where fire response is happening. Fire teams come back. They come back, with all the contamination on them, both on the machinery, equipment, and their equipment, their clothing, and so on and so forth. And then there's a switch over to the clean side. The actual layout design is pretty unique in terms of the way that the architect has designed the building to the actual grade of the property, the grade of the land, trying to work with the land versus trying to have to remove more and more material to make all this work. There was a question by some people in the early days about putting this fire station along Centennial, like completely along Centennial. And I want you to keep in mind that we bought 6.18 acres of property. I think it was 6.18 acres of property from Metrolink some months ago. And the idea was we would take what we need and then we sell off the rest. We did not factor in the resale of the land because we want to give council the opportunity to really think about what they do with that land. So look at what are the optimal uses of the land, what would net the best return on the investment that we put into, the council's put into that land to get full value for the land in terms of resale down the road. So that you get for the community, some employment lands or manufacturing lands, or it could be other uses, depending on what council sees as the optimal way of reselling the property. So we didn't factor in the return on the investment, if you would. However, you need to keep in mind that as we go down the road, the next 2 or 3 years, you want to do that. There is an opportunity to return on investment because we paid 2.4 something million for it. We've only used, 3 point something acres. At the end of the day, you still got some money coming in that you can outpay for this this project in the longer term, just as a backdrop. So what we have is a facility that is laid out from from a fire standards process. And the fire chief, I'll welcome the fire chief to jump in as I go along to correct me if I go off target a little bit. It's been quite an experience in terms of listening to the team and how they operate and how they function. And also how we're trying to have best practices in the operation, but meet all the codes and so on and so forth. But some of the things that we looked at in terms of what we're doing now, we don't have all of our fire operations is not currently under one roof. So what you have now is everything under one roof. You have administration under one roof. You have the ELC under this roof. You have the fire prevention under this roof. You have all the training components on this property, both under the roof and outside. Everything is self-contained on this site. The ELC piece was a big piece of this design. We did not want to make this ELC any bigger than it needed to be, but we also didn't want an ELC to just sit there dormant every day. We want to make sure we design the building as multi-purpose as possible. Kind of one of our things we're doing at all facilities these days is making things more multi-purpose, and this facility is designed that way. Mr. Alaimo has mentioned that you want to make sure that you get total access. Everything is as large as you need, no bigger. And when it comes to certain pieces of this fire station, is quite critical. The big garage, if you would, that you call these these big bays, total function of fire response. You're also seeing a lot of your vehicles today are being built a little larger, more capacity, enhanced capacity. What that means, you need more space in your bays to operate. Currently, we have a lot of problems working with our crews just to get in around these vehicles to actually respond to fires and emergencies. So I got to say that having worked on this for a number of months with the fire team, with the architects, it has been a learning experience in trying to design this. And I'm kind of on the outside saying, okay, if you can cut that, make that, squeeze a little bit out of here, can you make this work? Because at the end of the day, we're going to try to find a budget that fits. And even then, we're definitely beyond where we anticipated. However, I think two things, as I pointed in the report, has happened here. One is we enlarged the facility from what we had seen in the master plan around 20,000 square feet, which is what we used when budgeting in the early days. And once we had, the process started, we got better informed on what today's facility should look like, as opposed to what we looked at in 2015. And in 2015, they didn't do a detailed dive into what you would need in a fire station to get kind of, cursory look at what a fire station should look like without getting into the detail. And what we've done here is got into the detail. And I think what we've delivered is a facility that's a 50 to 60 year window in the future. Again, with space that you can actually enhance or make larger at some later date, i.e. 20, 25 years from now, should our population increase, should you need to respond to more areas, should the neighboring municipalities grow as well and our contracts get bigger. And all these pieces are changing in front of you. So that's the sort of things we looked at when design is building. One of the things that we didn't get into detail, but I mean, Frank can certainly come back and discuss. One of the things we looked at in this facility is a community engagement piece. And if you know fire at all, we have an antique pumper, an old antique pumper. And originally we looked at this as sort of like a museum, if you would. And the feedback that these guys got certainly from my side of the table, from Ron, is that we need more than just that. This got to be usable space. And fire stations by their very nature, and fire teams by their very nature, are very community oriented. They're very involved in the community, and we use the community engagement piece because we want to create a space, open space, where we can engage the community, have food drives, have special events, have events for students coming in from schools, and all these kinds of things. But if you look at the way it's laid out, that green box, if you would, there was a way of looking at that. So we'd like to design it now if we can, based on purely the market. And if we got to do it now, we should do it now from a cost perspective. It'll get more in the future. But it is a piece that you can actually pick off. If you wanted to pick it off, it wouldn't have an impact on fire response. It would merely have an impact on our community engagement piece, which we think is very important, just from that perspective. I didn't get in detail on that, but when you get into the design, that's the sort of pieces we're looking at. Everything else, from a dirty side and a clean side of the fire suppression area, these are very key pieces, very critical pieces, and we picked up a few pieces that make this thing really, really work, so that our fire team feel certainly decontaminated when they come back into their space where they live every day, and that's quite important. The other thing in this report I want to touch on, we thought was very important, is that we did a couple of years ago get involved with McMaster University Masters of Engineering students who did a beautiful piece of work. And this was a lot of work, and it didn't cost us anything from a town perspective, but they also learned a lot from fire service and what firefighters do when they go to work every day and respond to fires and so on and so forth. And so we've used that data to inform the architect when he's designing the actual layout of this building, and so that our firefighters have a very healthy space to live in and work in and respond and come back to. So we designed the decom, what we call as decom center or decontamination area, in the facility. So we really want to make sure we targeted that, and so that the facility is totally decontaminated and healthy from a firefighter perspective for all kinds of good reasons. Overall, and I've been saying to the team all along, this is really not about, nobody's going to say, well, you should do this space and that space. It is what it is. It's a fire station. It provides a fire station or a fire response for this community, administrative-wise, ELC-wise, disaster-wise, and so forth. Going into the future, 50, 60 years, it really comes down to a time when you're trying to make a decision on a budget that's gone from a roughly $11, $12 million budget to what could be as high as 15. And in discussions with the treasurer, what we really wrestled with was, well, are we really going to need 15 million? Well, we don't really know. We got to put it out to market and see what happens. And I've told you a few times now in a few council meetings, it's a very difficult market to go into because we don't know what's going to come back. What we do believe, and I put a little section in the report at the direction of the treasurer, and she speaks to it in her report, is when you look at interest rates and so on and so forth. She can speak to that. But if interest rates go up, we anticipate, fingers crossed, like everybody else, that it might drive our contractual prices down. We'll see a decrease in the contractual prices as we go to tender sometime in late this year, or certainly early in the winter, depending on how quick we can get this designed. It will take a few months to design and go to tender. So it's not really a nutshell. I went on a little bit, but it's really a critical piece of work, and it really comes down to council making some decisions on how we could do this going forward and have a facility that would service this community and some surrounding neighbors that we actually look after on contract for the next 50 to 60 years.
Very good. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Osmond. Thank you to Mr. Alimo and also to Chief Morton and the team at the fire department for all the work. that they've done so far on this project. Madam Treasurer, I see you've lit up your screen. Maybe before I get ask councillors for their comments or questions, do you want to weigh in here on this inflation and potential, changes in the marketplace that you've referenced in your later report?
Thank you, Your Worship. And I did turn on my camera in solidarity with Mr. Osmond. We did work on this report for the longest time. So I will be touching upon the inflation report later tonight. But as far as my opinion around this is concerned, so the 30% contingency, again, it is essentially that, a contingency. We don't know whether we would require that whole 30% or we would just require 15%. We are closely monitoring market as it stands, and you have to appreciate the fact that inflation is happening in real time. Bank of Canada just released, as of June 1st, the new rate, which is 0.5% increase from April 13th. The next rate increase will happen on July the 13th again. So for me, to provide a concrete direction, or as to say how this is going to play out in the next few months, or even in the next couple of years, is very hard for me to pinpoint that. So just to wrap it up, the contingency we're asking is essentially for us to have the ability to pivot should we require that.
Very good.
I'll leave
Thank
it
you,
at
Madam Treasurer. All right, we've got a lineup here. Let's start with Councillor Sherwood. Go ahead.
Yes, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. Osmond, and thank you, Mr. Alamo. One of the concerns when I first read this was I was a little concerned about the shared dormitory and the shared shower and locker being unisex, and I would assume that you have consulted with the firefighters as far as how comfortable they feel being together. I had thought at first that you would probably make a woman's and a men's shower, but I think by the design, when Mr. Alamo had his design up, it looked like they're all individual. So it's not like 4 people are lined up having a shower and there's going to be men and women together, correct? They're all individual, and the same with the sleeping quarters. Mr. Alamo, I think is that what I read in your design? Oh. And I guess just to follow up on that, is there other stations that have female and males and that this has worked, this type of design?
So just in a nutshell, over the last 20 years, there has been an evolution of fire stations, and what's evolved in the last, call it 7 years, is this universal washroom so that it's not male and female, because one of the biggest challenges for fire departments is primarily 20, 30 years ago, they were male dominated, and there might be one woman. So the challenge for a fire station was you had to provide provisions for that woman of the opposite sex. As time has sort of progressed, we've now come and adopted a model where a washroom is shared. It can be male, female, whatever, and then the actual showering is private. The change room is strictly for your goods. You basically put in your civilian clothes, you grab your duty wear. So that's what has evolved over the last 7 years. All the stations I've designed, probably in the last 8-9 years, have evolved to this model, and that's why I've adopted it. And I expressed sort of that concern to the fire chief, because one of the original programming was, Chief, how many female and male components do you have, and do you see it progressively up to where maybe we're at 30 to 70%? So this is a flexible, what I call a flexible plan that allows for complete use by anybody.
Yeah, I felt more comfortable once I saw your design and the details of it, that it looks like it could work. I just was a little concerned of, the men and the women sleeping in the same area. Maybe someone's not comfortable with that, but I can see you've made individual rooms as well.
Yeah, and the way the dormitories are divided as to basically staging. There's four firefighters on a crew. There's four separate rooms. Double occupancy. There will never be 2 people in the same room, theoretically.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that.
No problem.
Looks great.
Thanks, Councillor. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. First of all, I'm very impressed with what I'm seeing, both financially and physically with the design. I did have a quick question for Mr. Alamo. In regards to the hose tower, I was under the impression that hose towers were on their way out for health and safety issues. Do you still build stations with hose towers, or is this a one-off?
To answer your question, you must have fire station experience, but
former fire chief.
Okay, so with regards to fire station and the evolution of fire station, hoses have evolved. They're now synthetic. They weren't the cloth or the previous ones where we had to dry them out in hose towers. In the designs I've done most recently, some departments still like that traditional hose tower anchoring within the community to be a symbol. It becomes still a symbol. So what we did with this fire station, and I mentioned in my report, we're going to use this hose tower as a dual purpose. Like Ray has mentioned, there's a multi-uses to every space. This will be a training facility. So we will design it in a way so that there's stairs, enclosures, so they can use the tower as a means of getting up and down stairs with hose and use it as a training facility for the firefighters. Is that answer sort of the question? Yeah, we've gone away from cloth hoses and the fabric hoses, and now they're all synthetic. They don't need to be blown out. They can drip dry, or they can just put a blower on and you can put them right back where they were. But most hoses now have to be cleaned, so there is a little bit of a drying process. So you can, in this scenario, you can dry it or do it the new way and blow them out.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. All right, Councillor Andrews, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening, everyone, again. Through my previous role in post-secondary education, I am familiar with Mr. Alamo's successes and designs of fire stations, and very impressed by the work that his firm has done. So we are in very good hands. Mr. Osmond, again, a very quick comment. Thank you so much for not only the report, but also your forward thinking and the fact looking at potential community activities that could be utilized not only with the facility itself that is proposed, but also for the adjacent property that the town has ownership of. Very quickly, this is pertaining to the DCOM zone, and I know in other facilities where that is not so close to where some of the other firefighters would end up, of course, showering and all of that. I know there's a very specific process. Was there any consideration to have that specific location moved a little bit further away from the occupancy of the firefighters themselves? And I do have another question, and pertaining to that also is separate HVAC that would be a part of that area.
Mr. Lyon.
Yeah, I can answer that quickly. Mr. Andrews, the DCOM for the personnel is a one-way direction only.
Yes.
So that was specifically designed, and I understand your point. The problem with having a DCOM area separately removed from the living quarters is now the staff have to cross the apparatus bay, or they got to come back to the apparatus bay, which could be decontaminated or contaminated. So we've just lost that whole process. In this sort of layout, it's linear. You go from the apparatus bay through the DCOM and then end up in the showers. You don't end up in the hallways. You end up in the shower area where you change your clothes and do the second cleaning. It was actually intentional.
No, I really appreciate that answer, because again, that seems to be the most appropriate way of doing so. But again, I've seen other applications. Very quickly, the other comment is as for the topography, I know that Mr. Osmond referenced, some possibilities of trying to have everything kind of on one level, but I really like the AODA compliance, but also clarification on that ramp, and also the opportunity to have members of our community utilize that facility when necessary. But excellent design and very impressed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Councillor Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Osmond or perhaps Chief Morden, my questions are on the apparatus bays. So in my private sector career, I've worked on a number of fire halls, and none of them to date have had 4 full double apparatus bays, and none of them have had a decontamination bay specifically for vehicles. And so I'd just like to hear sort of the background on that decision. And obviously this is extra floor space, this is extra capital money that we're looking at. And, you know, I want to make sure that the number, you know, is justified, because it's certainly more than I've seen in my career. And, you know, I'll let Mr. Osmond or Chief Morton speak to it.
Well, I'll let it go to defer to Chief Morton and let him speak to the 4 bays.
Good evening, everybody, and through you, your worship, to Councillor Peters. Yes, I guess every fire station is unique in their own ways as far as what the community requires, and we respond to over 35,000 residents in Orangeville and the surrounding area. Our call volume is about 1,400. And the size of our town, we've been very fortunate to get by with 1 station. And with this new location, it allows us still to maintain very good responses. So I guess where some areas would maybe have 2 stations and they would split up those vehicles over those stations, they would reduce the size of the apparatus bays. As far as the decontamination portion, we're somewhat forward thinking, and there's more and more fire stations that are being built. I've seen a lot throughout the United States. There's more and more emphasis on firefighter safety and health and wellness. When it comes to we're prone to I believe it's over 15 different cancers now that firefighters have, you know, various higher risk of getting. And so that's, again, working with McMaster University, we've really tried to work to provide a safe area. In our current station, when we bring an apparatus back now that is contaminated from a fire, it's brought inside and washed. And whenever it's washed, all of the contaminants being expelled off there with the water spray lands on the walls, it lands on doors, it lands on our bunker gear, it lands on other people that are maybe maintaining other equipment. And that is cross-contamination, and that puts firefighters at more of a risk. So by having a separate bay, and some of the plans that I've seen in the past, they have an actual exterior building, another garage that they come into. We've just kind of tried to incorporate that within our own building. So that bay would be of all washed down and scrubbable surfaces, so that following a call that the walls can be scrubbed down, walls, ceilings, floors. It's not just the truck that gets decontaminated in there, it's the fire hose, the SCBAs, things like that. So by keeping everything within that compartment, it separates the contaminated product from getting into the cleaner bays. So whenever our firefighters are working in the bays, they know that there should be no dirty, contaminated equipment in that area, that they should feel safe.
Thanks. So if you don't mind, I'll just double back to the 4 bay scenario. So I believe, based on the report, the Orangeville Fire has 6 vehicles at the moment, one of which I guess you could call a passenger vehicle for the rescue truck. Do you see a point where we have 8 full-size vehicles needing those bays, even with, you know, build out only being an extra, you know, 5,000 or 7,000 people in town?
Right. So we have a total of 6 apparatus. So, and again, as Ray kind of mentioned, over the years, they've got larger and larger and increased in size, which takes up more floor area. However, we do have some other vehicles. For instance, we have a pickup truck with a trailer, and that trailer supplies the necessary equipment for grass fires and things like that. It also supplies with water rescue equipment. It has a all-terrain vehicle in it, and currently that's kept outside. And so, you know, through our winters, we can get some good dumpings of snow or freezing rain, and that delays our response. We have to go out, we have to start it, clean off the truck, get the equipment ready to go, and it kind of delays that. So by having the extra space in the fire station, that trailer and the pickup can stay in there as well. And it also provides another area just for for the chief and the deputy chief as well, because primarily the deputy chief, but that myself respond to most calls. And again, if we can save time by exiting the building without snow and ice and things like that, that just allows us that much more accommodation. As well, it provides an area on the floor that if there's other equipment that needs to be worked on, it just provides that extra bit of an area.
Okay, thanks. I'll save my next question for next time around. Have an energy question, but I'll let the other councillors take a turn.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Peter. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. A comment and then a couple questions if I could. One is, I know it's coming up later on, but we've already talked to Treasurer Syed and the report that she's put forward. I think these kind of capital investments is exactly what our next big thing is we're going to be dealing with. There's a couple of other things on this agenda tonight. It's concerning, and I just wanted to say I read that report with great interest and completely agree with it. It's something I follow closely. Waiting or holding off isn't going to help our situation. It's simply going to make it worse. My question is on the renos. Frank, you had talked about the hall is set up for renos moving forward. And I guess I was curious. I stared at what I thought the renos would be, and it's exactly where Councillor Peters was going. Currently, there's 4 bays. Would you expand to 5 bays? And then the other side is, would you expand the width, I guess, if we had more firefighters? But I struggle with that because, Councillor Peters is right. I mean, we're only going to have 8,000 more people by 2050. I just don't know what we would be expanding the facility for at this point. It feels like we built it with excellence, and I don't know that we need to have that extra land as we go forward for the fire hall. But I'm not the expert. I'm just the critical eye. And then my last one is, if I could, when that's all done, Frank, I'd love to hear from you, Chief Morden. Always value your opinion, and we really haven't gotten your blessing overall and how you feel about what's being presented. And I'd just be curious what your expert opinion is on this facility when we hear on the renovation piece.
Chief Morden.
If Frank can answer.
Yeah, just to reply to Councillor Taylor, with regards to expansion, when I said the expansion, it's primarily not for the apparatus bay. That has set up for the next 50 to 60 years. All the support facilities for the 4 apparatus bays and their supporting facilities, all the rooms, the gear, that is set up for a we'll call it a long-term plan. The expansion that I speak of is more for the living quarters. If there is a potential, the way we've laid out the site plan, to expand the living quarters or the administrative area. So if you look at the site plan, if you want, I could share the site plan and show those areas of expansion. This is sort of a long-term plan. I've sort of kept it in mind for this plan that if at a later date, 25 years from now, you have, 2 fire chiefs or 2 deputy fire chiefs and 4 fire prevention staff members, that area can be accommodated and expanded without interrupting or disrupting the existing facility. Does that make sense?
Does.
Okay.
Does. Thank you.
Very good. We've got Councillor Post and then Councillor Peters back for another question. Go ahead.
Perhaps we hear from Chief Morden.
Oh, I'm sorry. Chief Morden, go ahead.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. And through your worship to Councillor Taylor. This is something that I've been envisioning for some time now. And as Mr. Osmond and Alamo have stated, a lot of work has gone into this. And I'm proud to say that I've included all my staff in this process. Right through the Christmas break, I gave them, I think it was 8 or 10 pages of different things to go through. They submitted their ideas and suggestions, and Deputy Chief Richardson and I, when we came back in the new year, poured over some of those recommendations. Some we took, some had to be eliminated just due to costs and size and things like that. And one of the first things I had said to Frank when I met him was there was three main things that I wanted to see in the station. And it's improving and maintaining our response times. So there's different components within that building that assists us with maintaining our response times, the location of the dorms. I have a shoot time of 2 minutes that I expect my firefighters to be out. Some places are 3 minutes, but I expect them to be out and in the truck and booking on the air within 2 minutes, whether they were in the shower, working out, in the dorm, or during training. It's 2 minutes. And so the building is kind of built around that. No matter where they are able to hit their truck and book on the air within 2 minutes. The decon area, again, I've been working with McMaster for 2 years now on this. A very smart bunch of students. There is some information for decontamination within the fire service, but they kind of helped us along a little bit in some of their dealings, and I'm still working with them right now through to the summer. And the decontamination portion, that's another component that I wanted to see from response to firefighter health and wellness. And the decon area is one of those. And I'm seeing, I know personally, numerous firefighters that have contracted cancers and other diseases within the fire service. So the decon area is when we're, hopefully when we're building a new fire station, that we're going to build it right for the future. And Mr. Alamo had kind of mentioned about the NFPA certifications. This helps meet some of those standards that are there or will be coming out very shortly. And again, the health and wellness, we've got our between the decon and the fitness room and things like that. We're looking after their physical well-being, the mental health, and things like that. And this is all through various studies in the fire service that helps keep a firefighter healthy and well and working their full career. The other component that I had asked was for the EOC to be involved. Not all fire stations would have an EOC. Orangeville's has been located in I guess what I would call a portable style structure for the last few years. And we've had some issues, and it's there, it's usable, but it's not to the ideals of what we should be to today in technology and things like that. So by incorporating the EOC into our training rooms, because our firefighters, full-time, volunteer, meet on a regular basis, and we need that space anyways, but we're incorporating it with a movable wall and the technology in there that we can break it down to be just used for an emergency operations center. I too thought we could get a building done for about 20,000 square feet. Compared to some other buildings that I had looked at. But when we sit down and we go through where we are now and where we could possibly be in the future, I think we've had that vision of the future and who could be in the facility, and that we don't have to go and make other additions onto that building in the future. I think we've got this rounded out, that I don't think you would see any more major expansion to that building. If that was to come, we would probably be looking at a second station down the road. And I couldn't tell you when that would be. It's not in the very near future, but that could be the next step before alterations to this building would ever happen.
Thanks.
I hope I answered your question.
Thank you. Councillor Post.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to start by a comment that I am so impressed with the design of this new fire station. I think the design is very progressive. I am most pleased with the thoughtfulness of the addition of community space. I think that having our firefighters work with the community is such an important piece of what they do. And I was also really pleased to just hear from Chief Morden that all the recommendation, or many of the recommendations, were made from the frontline team right within our community, who know the needs of our community better better than anyone else. So, you know, I think that's why we can see that this is really put together with the best interest of the community in mind. I think this station will serve our community extremely well for at least decades to come. But I do have two quick questions. So the first one is to Mr. Alaimo. I noticed on the plans that there is at least one accessible parking space in the parking area, which I think is visitor parking or public parking, but I didn't notice any accessible spaces for staff or volunteer firefighters, or for staff or volunteers. Perhaps I missed them, but as chair of accessibility committee, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about that. And my second one is to Mr. Osmond, and I'm just hoping that after Mr. Alaimo speaks, that perhaps you can provide a timeline for anybody that is watching tonight, like when we expect that our new station will be open and serving our community. It's a lot of money, and I think the community will be very eager to hear when this great new facility will be open and ready to go.
Through your worship to Councillor Post. Sorry if I went through the site plan quickly, there are 2 accessible parking stalls at the front of the main entrance. Typically, the volunteer firefighters and the full-time are, we'll call it able body. Like I said, this is an evolving plan. We will probably be taking comments from either Heritage and the rest of the community or other staff members and other departments. So this plan can evolve. I'm not saying it's set in stone. Right now, we've had a lot of collaboration. We're just trying to get to the next level. So to answer your question, there are 2 accessibility parking spots, either for staff or the general public by the main entrance. And if the need arises, we can incorporate additional accessible parking spots, either in the full-time or in the volunteers parking spaces.
I appreciate that commentary, and I know that typically the firefighters are able-bodied, but I am aware that we also have office staff and would love the opportunity to know that we're being accessible and inclusive of everybody. So I appreciate that comment. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Councillor Post. Councillor Peters.
Mr. Mayor, could Mr. Osmond reply to the other?
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Osmond. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Just a quick response to Councillor Post. They're good questions, and you're right from an accessibility perspective, not just for the staff, but if we have a need for more spaces, the actual parking lot that we've designed to the south could certainly be changed and updated, and that way we could have more accessible spaces closer to the building, and the other staff that I guess you might want to call able-bodied can go to the further back off the site. From a time frame perspective, I asked the same question today. Is one I ask a lot. How fast can we turn this thing around if we got the green light on design and we need to design it and go to tender, and if things all worked out well, we're at go to tender by this fall, then we would see this building hopefully completed within 18 months. I think is the best case scenario that we discussed today. If we go 18 months, you'll certainly get us into the spring of 24, and that's what you'll be looking at to finish the building. And again, it depends on the environment we're in right now, but all things being equal, generally we look at an 18-month construction timeframe on this building, this size of the building.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Councillor Post, and thank you, Mr. Osmond. Councillor Peters, go ahead, sir.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you, now will be the comment everyone was expecting the first time around, which was in respect to the net zero requirements. So through you, Mr. Osmond, I'm just hoping we can talk through the FCM procedure a little bit more. As everyone on this call knows, I strongly believe that this building should be a net zero building. We haven't had a community-facing, new build for 18 years, and we may not see another one for a decade. So this is our chance. It's certainly viable in the industry. And Mr. Osmond, I'm hoping you can walk me through where we're at with that process, because as you know, a successful capital application to FCM has to be preceded by a feasibility study to outline the net zero measures. That would obviously all have to be costed, and there's a number of decision points there. So if you could fill us in on how that conversation has progressed to date and what those milestones might look like, and then I have a follow-up for you as well.
Thank you. Through your worship to Councillor Peters. It's been an interesting area. The net zero, as we all know, I mean, the federal government declared a couple of years ago that we would have net zero carbons by 2050. And we likewise would like to promote that where possible. This fire station has given us that first opportunity. Having said that, we have built into our consulting fees an option to do the feasibility study. It's roughly around $30,000 to do that. Time frame wise is something we can turn around rather quickly with the experienced team that Frank LMO has with them. And we would do that first and foremost. We couldn't do that until we had approval on the footprint of this building, which we're putting for you tonight. And once we get the green light on the footprint, then we will actually start the process. We have sent letters to FCM saying that we are interested in pursuing a grant process. There's 2 intakes, I think one in September, one in February, I believe, for different times of the year. So we're looking at that. As you may or may not know, there's a 90-day window. We got to turn this thing around. But we think we have time to do that, and we have time to get the feasibility study finished. And we need to, we have the grant in front of us, starting to populate the grant application. And once we do that, we'll go through that process. And if we get the funding, it could take, it's very competitive, as you know, and everything is competitive, but there have been a lot of applications approved for fire stations. And we think we have a good project. And then I think Frank alluded to earlier, he's already designed some of the, the net zero pieces in the building. But we want to take it a step further, and I've listed in the report some of the things we would be pursuing, everything from solar panels to what we do on site for water conservation, so on and so forth. So all these kinds of things would be going into the application, and we would make application as soon as possible before by September is our wish, and then we would see what comes back, and that would get us in line with the tender process and when we award the contract. And hopefully then we can make the changes to bring it up to net zero levels. That would be sort of the time frame we're looking at, Councillor Peters.
Okay, thanks. So I guess on that note, in dealing with this again in my other world, by the time you go through the study process, have it approved, make a capital application, have it approved, you could be running into timeline issues for a winter or spring tender. So obviously that could have an impact on overall cost as well. So I'm glad to know you're at least on top of that process. With respect to the recommendation, you've got a potential loan amount in there for $4 million. The capital applications are usually capped at 5, and so I'm wondering why we wouldn't be pursuing the full $5 million in capital funding.
Back to Councillor Peters, good question. I think initially we looked at our footprint of our building, and the consultants looked at they provided a budget of estimate based on the building footprint of roughly $4 million. You're absolutely correct. If anybody knows me by now, if I can get the maximum $5 million, I'll go for $5 million. But at this point, I was taking the numbers from the budget projections that we had, and having heard a few things, read a few things over the last few weeks. You're right. I would go for the max and hope for the 4. But the thing is that we believe that the footprint that we have here needs at least a $4 million to do the net zero pieces that we need for this building. The $5 million would be wonderful. $4 million would be critical.
Yeah. So, and the good news about that process is that it's not just the upgrade costs that are eligible. So, I would hope, and maybe this is an amendment to the motion, Mr. Mayor, but I'd like to see us go for the full 5 in loan opportunities, and then if that's awarded, you get up to 15% as a grant, which would be $750,000, which obviously would help the bottom line. So, if we go back to the motion, I don't recall if we have one, but I'd love to see the $5 million pursued, and again, I'll be supporting the motion based on the pursuit of the net zero components, and Ray and his team getting us to that critical milestone.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Peters. I see Deputy Mayor got his hand up again. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, I'd like to make that motion if I could.
Well, I'd like to speak before we get into the motion. I haven't had a chance here. A couple things. I'm not as enamored as Councillor Post is with the community engagement piece. I'm here to worry about fire prevention and firefighting. Not to build a museum and a place for people to meet. I don't agree with that particular part of this design. As I said, I'm here to talk about firefighting and make the best possible building that we have for that purpose specifically. The other thing that concerns me about the site plan, you know, looking at the surplus land, and maybe if you can pull, can somebody pull the site plan up on the screen?
I can pull it up.
Thank you. Thank you. What concerns me, Mr. Limo and Mr. Osmond, is the surplus land to the left. You know, having some knowledge of planning matters and setbacks and what have you, the entry point for that surplus land is off Centennial, and you know, I don't know if it's because it's so narrow, it's going to have a very restrictive building footprint there. You know, you have to have egress in and out of that whatever that building might be. And, you know, my question is, can this building be adjusted? Can it be moved over further to the east? Is the parking that you've got down the side there, does it have to be in that place, or can some of that training area be utilized for parking? I'm very concerned. I think that land, again, I'd have to, maybe Mr. Ward is on the line here. Could we ask Mr. Ward to weigh in regarding setback requirements for buildings in an industrial setting like this, Mr. Ward?
Thank you, Your Worship. We could take a closer look at that. I'm sure the architect is familiar with the zoning requirements. This is a general industrial zone area. It perhaps has a more generous front yard setback requirement. That being said, however, if there's appetite to seek variance of that, that's something we could work towards through a minor variance process if it was appropriate to do so.
What about side yard setbacks, Mr. Ward?
Again, Your Worship, that's something I'd have to look into. I can pull that information for you if you wish.
I mean, you know, part of the attractiveness of this 6-acre parcel was the fact that there was going to be some surplus land, and I'm concerned that the way this is laid out, that surplus land is not going to be as valuable as it could be. So, Mr. Alimo, can you speak to this? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so in the development of the fire station, the primary purpose is utilization of the site. As I sort of move into, I'm sure I got the site plan open. That area that Your Worship speaks of is the landscaped area. This property line is adjustable. As we develop further into the site plan and go through all the turning radiuses, right now we have most of it resolved. This landscape area was to create a buffer area to whatever use would be in the future to the immediate left. The size of the parcel is a 2-acre parcel. The frontage would be substantial for someone with a small business, primarily for trucking and storage of vehicles in the back. The site also slopes, so they would have to be cognizant of that fact, but the large portion of the front is relatively flat. So from a net gain, this is a small industrial site, usable in my opinion. But to Your Worship's point, the fire station, once we get into a little bit more of the site development, could be moved further to the right, which is to the east. And if the mayor and members of council look to remove any component, and I think that Your Worship was speaking of the community engagement room, if that is removed, then the access point into this, that means I can eliminate this whole site. It makes the building slightly smaller, and I can adjust it to the east and then move this property line to the east. So everything is sort of a moving target. Nothing is set in stone at this point in time, Worship.
Well, that's really my comment here on this, is that we should look to perhaps move the building towards the right. And as I said, the display area for the Bickles are nice to have, but it's not needed, in my opinion. So any further questions from councillors on this? No? Okay, Deputy Mayor, you want to make a, we've got a recommendation here, which we've read, Deputy Mayor. Do you want to just make the motion to as it stands?
I was going to add on Councillor Peters' recommendation as well.
To go for the 5 million?
Correct.
Would you also consider adding on, considering moving the building over if we can try and maximize that lot size on the other side?
Is there another opportunity coming up to look at this? Or is this the final yes or no?
Well, I think from a funding standpoint, Mr. Osmond, you have to correct me, Mr. Limo, this is we're asking for funding and going ahead with this site plan more or less as it is, but you know, tweaking the positioning of the building, I would hope is something that could be considered. Mr. Osmond, could you speak to this?
If I could, Your Worship, through you to council, absolutely. I mean, we're down to two. Well, first off, we need a green light to go and design this building because we're getting into a time crunch and with the market we're in and so on and so forth. But that being said, we still got to tweak a few things with the building. If we can move a little bit to the east, and I'll just speak briefly to the surplus lands. The surplus lands were designed to come off of Centennial because of economies of coming off of Centennial because of access to all the servicing. It'd be a lot more advantages to coming off of Centennial in a resale than coming off of Commerce to the rear. So that's why we designed it off Centennial. We've actually designed, or Triton's designed Centennial Road to provide that water service to that site. So we've got all that infrastructure in the ground now to make that property that more valuable. And the frontage on that, I don't have the exact size of the frontage, but it is wider than it looks in terms of, because of the magnitude of the fire station itself. It looks really narrow, but it's not as narrow as one would think. And I think from a resale perspective, we will be looking at that and bringing that back in the future, Deputy Mayor, because that's something we need to take a close look at. But we are looking at it to make sure that we get full advantage of the surplus lands to give us the most value for it. So if we got to tweak the property to move it to the east, and if certain pieces come off of the building when that makes it even more, well, that's fine. But this building still can be tweaked a little bit. But we don't intend on coming back to council to talk about that tweaking. We would hopefully take the direction from council, but we'd like to go ahead and give the architect the green light to design it based on what we have. If we can tweak it, given the comments, and we can take less land for the fire station, that we will definitely work towards that.
Right, and you do have a large landscaped area on the Commerce elevation there, Commerce frontage, so it looks to me like it could be shifted to some extent.
If I could speak, sorry, Your Worship, if I could speak to that briefly, that it doesn't show there now because we're not into the detailed design, but there's a water detention pond got to go in there because of the water on the site. So all that's got to be wrapped around the design is also part of the net zero pieces and so on. So there's that as well in the detailed design. So it shows up as a open green space right now, but we will need that property for that purpose.
Okay, Chief Morden, I saw you put your hand up, sir. Did you want to comment?
No, that's fine. I believe Mr. Osmond just covered it with the storm managed water pond.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So with that being said, hopefully, Mr. Limo, you can consider some tweaking of the site plan to try and maximize that surplus land, the value of it. But I know there are side yard setback requirements from industrial buildings that are substantial. And so when you look at that narrow piece of land, by the time you knock off the side yard setbacks, you're restricting the value of that land. So the wider that frontage can be, I think the more valuable it is. Okay, so Deputy Mayor, you've made a motion here with the amendment of the $5 million loan request on the FCM Green Municipal Fund application. Any other changes anybody wishes to make on this before we move ahead? All right, do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Post, all in favor? Very good. Thank you, Mr. Limo. Thank you, Mr. Osmond and Mr. Morden. This is a very important thing for not only Orangeville, but the surrounding towns that we serve with our fire department. And this is a 50-year plan that we're setting in motion now. And I think it's an excellent design, and looking forward to seeing it completed in a couple of years. All the best, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. Boy, we're running late, folks. Here we are, 9:55, but we have so many important things on this agenda. It's tough to trim it back, but let's move on to 12.2, which of course was the water meter replacement and advanced metering infrastructure. We had a very comprehensive presentation from Mr. Cardy earlier. This is a recommendation that report INS 2022-031 water meter replacement and advanced metering infrastructure system be received. Can we have a motion received, please? Councillor Andrews, seconded by Councillor Sherwood. We have a question from Mr. Peters. Councillor Peters, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll try and be brief. Through you to Mr. Kostelak, two-part question. The first, could you just briefly explain the timelines? I guess, I believe this council made a motion to look into this issue upwards of 2 years ago, and we find ourselves still 2+ years away from implementation. So that I find that a bit frustrating. I know there's been a lot of complications along the way, but maybe you could just round out that conversation for me. And secondly, quickly, I'm wondering why the motion doesn't include a motion to proceed with the recommendation on the advanced metering technology, or is that sort of built in to the receipt of the report?
Sure. Through your worship, start with the second one first. It could. The intent of the motion really is to proceed as outlined in the report, which includes the advanced metering technology. With respect to the timeline, again, I can't speak to a whole lot of the history, but I can give you the reason, and it's not a great excuse. In our environment group, when I started at the town, there was 6 positions and 1 person, and that person was doing everything they could to keep projects moving forward. And I do acknowledge there was a lot of things on the burner, and it takes time to move them all forward. I commend her. She did a fantastic job doing it. Since then, we've actually been able to bring a few more resources online. We do have a capital works manager that's going to be starting with us in August, and really doing as many proactive things to try and deal with that backlog of capital projects. When we went through the list, there's 101 capital projects. I think council got that a month or so ago, and the intent of this capital works manager and the project manager that we will be hiring is really to avoid this from happening in the future. The value of having dedicated resources that actually deal with capital projects and nothing else, I have every confidence will prove out the ability to streamline the delivery of capital works, and that's something that's been missing, quite frankly.
Thanks, Mr. Kostelak.
So the other part of it, I believe the total time frame was 565 days. So it's a little under 2 years. It should be, the schedules are a bit of a question mark, just simply based on, availability and supply chain issues. But we will endeavor to report back to council when we have updates in terms of timing, and hopefully they're positive updates.
Thanks. Would it help staff to have the motion include direction on that, or is that redundant?
I have absolutely no issue with including it in the motion. It shows support for the technology.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to see a more substantial approval of that metering system, so that there's no doubt moving forward if the rest of the council agrees.
I think we're in agreement, and also my printed agenda doesn't have the full recommendation. I want to add this, and that council approved the additional funds of $2 million, 50% from the OCIF provincial grant and 50% from the Water Reserve Fund towards the water meter replacement and advanced metering infrastructure system project. was it Councillor Peters? Did you make this motion or Councillor Andrews? And
Yeah.
Andrews and Sherwood, I'm sorry. So you're
Yes.
good with adding what I just added on there, which
Absolutely.
read previously?
Yes.
All right, good. And Councillor Peters, are you satisfied? We're using this
Yes.
advanced metering infrastructure system?
Yeah, I think you're right. Maybe the abridged portion of the agenda didn't have the full description, but I would hate to come back 6 months from now and say, you know, did we actually approve that direction, right?
Right. All right. Any further questions, councillors, on that? No. All in favor? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Koslick. Thank you, Mr. Cardy, and good luck with that project. All right. Moving on. We have a joint municipal water management model agreement, which is INS 2022-041. It's a recommendation that the report INS 2022-041 regarding a joint municipal water management model agreement be received, and the council pass a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a joint municipal water management agreement with the Corporation of the Township of Amaranth, Corporation of the Township of East Garifraxa, and the Corporation of the Town of Mono as substantially in the form as attached to this report. We have a motion to on that, please. Councillor Peters, second by Councillor Andrews. Any questions or comments on this? All in favor? Thank you. Moving on to 12.4, additional funds for the Broadway Bricks project, which is INS 2022-043. There's a recommendation that the report INS 2022-043, additional funds for Broadway Bricks be received, and the council authorized the transfer of $800,000 from the General Capital Reserve Fund to the Broadway Brick Replacement Project. Can we have a motion on that, please? Deputy Mayor McIntosh, seconded by Councillor Post. We have a question from Councillor Peters. Go ahead, sir.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Sorry to drag this out through you to Mr. Koslick. I know this was also before your time, but at one point, council had approved a bit of a bump to this capital project so that we could look at stamped concrete instead of bricks for a reduced maintenance cost and perhaps longevity. Did any of the tendering process include unit prices for that switch? Was that investigated as an option?
Through you, Your Worship, I wasn't aware of that motion. I believe the tender is based on Unipavers bricks. And I apologize, I wasn't aware that council had passed a motion to do
investigate concrete. Yeah, we did.
Yeah, there are a number of enhancement council asked for that are all included in the project, but I don't believe the powdered concrete is.
Okay, yeah, that was well before the discussion about bike racks and water fountains and stuff like that. It was based on the original, I believe, 600,000 that we bumped to perhaps 8. Looking at the longevity and the lower maintenance, but I mean, we're at a tender situation now, so it doesn't look like it's going to change. But I thought I'd ask for that background. Sounds like that step was missed, perhaps.
Sorry, Your Worship. If I can just add, I got a text from one of our staff. They must be watching online. They did actually investigate the pattern concrete. It was significantly more expensive than the brick. The additional funds that were added to the project wasn't near enough to cover the additional expense, so they went with the brick.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Any further comments or questions on this, council? All right, all in favor? Thank you. Moving on to item 12.5. This is regarding 144 Broadway, the Orangeville Public Library Heritage Permit Recommendation, HR 2022-04 and INS 2022-044. Recommendation of the report 144 Broadway Heritage Permit Recommendation be received, and that the Heritage Permit file number HR 2022-04 be approved in general accordance with the proposed work as illustrated in attachment number 2 to report INS 2022-044. Could we have a motion on this, please? Councillor Andrews, second by Councillor Peters. Any questions, council, on this? All in favor? Oh, sorry, Councillor Taylor, you have a question?
I do. Thank you, Your Worship. I guess, you know, offline, I did speak with the chair of the library board and with she's not CAO, Chief Librarian Darla Fraser. And I guess I'm just concerned. I see a bigger play here longer term. And the bigger play, and again, tonight and in the short term, this is not to be discussed, but the bigger play is some sort of atrium, and it's been brought up in previous capital budget meetings. I guess I just wanted to make sure everybody was okay. We're going to spend money on a hallway, which I see that we need, but it's going to be there in the way of what future progress could be. That building, along with Town Hall and the lovely county building on Zina Street, in my mind, are the three most beautiful buildings in the entire town. I think we should just be very careful with what we're doing here. And I don't know, I'm looking for commentary that this is the right thing to do, given where we are. And I come at it from a benevolent standpoint of just love that building. So I don't know, it feels like we're putting patchwork on something that we should actually be doing something larger to.
Mr. Osmond.
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. Through to Councillor Taylor. I guess there's two things. First off, the elevator itself cannot be designed internal to the building based on our budget and so on. Even if we had $2 million, we still would have trouble with trying to design a new shaft and a new elevator to meet code internal to the building and still have a way of getting around the expanded design of the elevator. So the issue we have is that internally, we're left with no space to go from the main floor, if you would, where the atrium is to, down to the washrooms or down to the basement floor. So what has happened is we're putting in the glaze, or we call glazed walkway. One of the beauties of the glazed walkway is, as you probably would notice, is that, you know, it can be put up as a good structure, but it can also be taken down and moved to a different structure in the future. So if you wanted to, there was a thought process at one point. I know Darla spoke about it. We all spoke about it. What if we were to enclose the entire garden area, if you would, that comes towards Broadway, all the way out to where the statue is, that kind of a thing. Now we're talking about some major dollars to and a major project to actually expand the footprint of the building. And to take on the development of a new atrium space, if you would, or a new access space that gives you whatever a new facility in certain terms, is a major project. And if you were to do that down the road, the cost implication of taking down the glazing would be minimal. And in fact, you could probably still use it and repurpose it, you know, in a new piece. Because if you were designing this building in the future to put on a new front, if you would, then it might be a great option to actually put more glazing to open that up so that you still got the openness that you don't enjoy now internal to this building. This building is really don't have a lot of daylight. So at the end of the day, you could do some great things with that garden in the front, enclose it all, repurpose the front end of it, still stay within the heritage value of the building, frontage of the building. One of the things about the glazing is that they're trying to protect the big pillars in the main front of the building so that when you look through the glazing, you still see the pillars. The pillars are an integral part of the heritage of the building. So that's my understanding is that we would use the glazing and it fits the heritage model as long as you can see through the glazing and see that these pillars are there. But in the future, Councillor Taylor, if you wanted to expand and do that atrium piece, if you want to call it that, then you can very well just take the glazing down, move it out, and do your piece. You still got your elevator, you still got the complete access egress going on, and it would work down the road if you see fit to expand the building.
Great, thank you, Mr. Osmond. Just to be clear, I'm not advocating for expansion today. However,
okay.
At some point, this is going to be on the docket, and part of it, and your explanation gives me great confidence. So thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. All right, we've got Councillor Sherwood with a question, comment.
Yes, Your Worship, I just wanted to make a comment. Being the council representative on Heritage Orange Hill, myself, along with another very intellectual Heritage Committee member, Miss Addy, her and I did go and look at the building because, as most of you are aware, this is a designated building, so they cannot do any major things to something like that. So our I encourage the rest of council to go and spend some time with Darla Fraser. She was very good at explaining everything and showing how everything was going to work. And the fact that it's going to be a glassed in walkout so that you can still see the heritage facade was extremely important to us. This design got the blessing from Heritage Orangeville, and I do, like I say, encourage you to go in and see how it will all work, because Darla was, if you're still on here, Darla, I just want to thank you very much for the time you spent with me and Miss Addie to explain how everything was going to work, and it's going to work, and it's going to be lovely.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Sherwood. Okay, folks, if there isn't any further questions or comments, all in favor? Very good. Thank you. Moving on to 12.6, a decision recommendation for housekeeping amendments to zoning bylaw number 22-90 as amended, INS 2022-045. This is the recommendation that the report, decision recommendation for housekeeping amendments to zoning bylaw as amended be received, and the council pass a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 22-90 as amended. Could we have a motion on this, please? Councillor Andrews, seconded by Deputy Mayor McIntosh. Any questions or comments on this? Councillor Andrews, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to make a comment. I really appreciate Mr. Ward and those that were responsible for the report who highlighted my question regarding shipping containers, and it certainly satisfies my concern. But I do have, of course, observation in many other communities where some of the shipping containers unfortunately have grown in height depending on the location. So I'm hoping that moving forward that we'll be monitoring that particular issue. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Council, any further questions? All right, all in favor? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ward. Moving on to 12.7, information update regarding digital transformation, a recommendation that report CPS IT 2022-020, an update on the town's digital transformation and smart community initiatives be received. Can we have a motion on this, please? Councillor Andrews, second by Councillor Taylor. Any questions of staff, council? All in favor? Thank you. All right, moving on to 12.9. This is the towing services and vehicle storage yard facility bylaw CPS 2022-046. Recommendation, option 1, that this report be received.
Mr. Mayor, you've missed 12.8, the multi-year accessibility plan.
Oh, my apologies. I'm sorry. Getting late here, Councillor Post. Jump right over that. Let's go back. I'm sorry, 12.8, multi-year accessibility plan, a recommendation that this report CPS 2022-033, the multi-year accessibility plan be received, and the council approve the 2022 to 2025 County of Dufferin multi-year accessibility plan with the incorporation of the Town of Orangeville's accessibility goals and objectives as outlined in the report CPS 2022-033. So could we have a motion on that item, please? Councillor Post, seconded by Deputy Mayor McIntosh. Councillor Post, go ahead.
Thank you very much. As chair of the Accessibility Committee, I just wanted to give a little bit of context to kind of the process that was taken to do this. And as is mandated by the AODA, every municipality has a requirement to have an accessibility plan, a multi-year accessibility plan, and it can fall within various ranges depending on what the scope of the work is. So typically it's a 3 to 5 year plan. Right now, our Accessibility Committee sits and hosts the joint accessibility committee with the County of Dufferin. So we decided this year that it would be a good initiative to move forward with a joint accessibility plan, which is typically not necessarily the norm when it's an upper tier and lower tier municipality kind of situation. But because of the nature of our advisory committees, it made sense to progress with this. And just as we move forward into the future, I wanted to make the commentary that we have great staff support on the accessibility committee with Sharon Doherty, who has an absolute passion for accessibility issues in the community. That said, though, she has another full-time responsibility when it comes to the town, and we have requirements under the AODA to continue to expand our accessibility. And I think that it would be prudent in the future, and I put this out in the hopes that staff is listening somewhere. I think it would be a wonderful idea if going forward in a coming budget, perhaps before this accessibility plan ends, that we look at hiring a full-time accessibility officer or something in that scope that would take care of all of the accessibility requirements going forward, could sit as a liaison with our committee, could also be responsible for all of the AODA requirements and compliance when it comes to information and communication and all of the other components that we're legislated to take care of with the AODA. I just think as we move forward and continue to grow, there's going to be a need for that. And, you know, potentially maybe it's only at 0.5 FTE, but I think that there needs to be a designated person as the requirements continue to grow and change. And as we continue to implement technology and make changes to our web design and PDF accessibility requirements, the needs and the pressures within the municipality to meet those compliance measures are going to continue to be strained. And I think it would just be prudent going forward that perhaps we consider the idea of a 0.5 or a 1 FTE who could take that on as a full-time role.
Thank you, Councillor Post. Okay, any other comments or questions on this particular item? All right, all in favor? Thank you. All right, back to 12.9. Again, this is the towing services and vehicle storage yard facility bylaw. So the recommendation was either option 1 or option 2. Option 2 having the addition of a public meeting to receive feedback and comments on the proposed towing services and vehicle storage yard facility bylaw, and that staff report back to council on August 8th on the comments and feedbacks received. Does anybody want to make a motion on one of those two options? Councillor Taylor?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. This thing has, it's been kind of a back burner project for me for most of our council term. And I just really think that we should have the experts in the room with us, and that's the tow truck operators, with some commentary from the OPP prior to this group of 7 making any major decisions. So it would be my recommendation that we allow that input to take place, and we're just prudent in any kind of decision that we'd be making. The 7 of us are not experts. I just really feel that there's some impassioned people in our community that will want to weigh in.
So you're making a motion on option 2 then, sir?
Yes, I am, sir.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Andrews? Yes. Any further comments or questions on this item? Councillor Sherwood, go ahead.
Yes, Your Worship. Just one comment. Sorry, I forget who the author is of this report.
Karen Landry.
Karen Landry.
Oh, okay. On Schedule 2, is it possible to change, or sorry, Schedule B, is it possible to change the wording from him and his to be something more gender neutral? I would assume by that they're writing that all tow truck drivers are male, and there could be a possibility that there's a female in this workforce. Could the wording please be changed to be more, to exclude saying specifically him and his? That's Schedule B.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Sherwood, there is a clause within there that says that they're interchangeable, but we can certainly during the next review of the bylaw make that update. It's not a problem at all.
Perfect. I just think there could be female drivers, that's all.
There is in our town.
Right. So thank you. Thank you, Ms. Landry.
All right. Any further questions or comments before we vote on this motion? No. All right. All in favor? Very good. Moving on to 12.10. Global Inflation Municipal Impact, CPS 2022-047. The recommendation is that report CPS 2022-047 dated June 13th, 2022, Global Inflation Municipal Impact be received. Can we have a motion on this, please? Councillor Peters, second by Councillor Taylor. Ms. Syed, before we discuss or vote, maybe if you could give us the Coles Note version for the public on your report, please.
Thank you, Thank you, Worship. Through you to Council. So I'll go pretty fast. And so the whole purpose of this report was to provide a preamble to our upcoming budget 2023, and also to sort of contextualize some of the increases in capital expenditures, contingencies, and the bottleneck in supply chain management. So the way I constructed the report is in 5 parts. So the part 1 talks about Bank of Canada, how they adjust rates, and I really wanted to explain how increasing interest rates actually deflates inflation. To most general public, that may seem a little counterintuitive, but I really wanted to provide that explanation. The second part is talking about the supply chain and how it really impacts Canada, given that we are an open economy. And I did provide some graphs to show how open this economy is. And I think that section is fairly self-explanatory. I've also provided some of the highlights from both the federal and the provincial budget to show you not so much so how these 2 levels of government are providing some incentive to the municipalities, but there are rooms for municipal grants down the line. And finally, which is more closer to our hearts, how does this impact Town of Orangeville? So immediately in 2022, our operating budget is somewhat foolproof in the sense that most of our operating cost has already been determined earlier in the year, so almost in a pre-inflation stage. Most of the significant impacts we're seeing are on the capital sides, and as we have already seen throughout the night, so I don't want to waste council's time on that. I would end my comment, at least for this part, with my concluding paragraph that I put towards the bottom of that report. And I would like to reiterate with the fact that in the last 2 years, one thing we have learned as a collective consciousness is to improvise and pivot, as we've gone through 2 years of COVID. And the town does have a very robust and healthy financial body in terms of we have a good assessment base, our reserves, our debt management, as well as our investment management is very well done. And you have seen that throughout my presentation during the 2022 budget. So do I have a concrete idea of how this is going to play out? I don't, because this is actually playing out in real time. But what I can say to you is that we do have a good leadership team, and we also have a good finance team in place who, in conjunction with the rest of our leadership and management team, will take this on as it comes, and we will keep you updated. With that, Your Worship, back to you.
And an incredible council as well.
Yes, indeed.
Right. Well, thank you for your very comprehensive report and your insight into the budgets and the impact of what we're facing right now. So it was, timely for sure. So thank you for your report. Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship. Thank you, Ms. Syed, for such a detailed report. Phenomenal. Hate to put you on the spot here, but regarding the provincial budget and all the incentives and programs that you've mentioned in there, I know due to the recent election, they hadn't passed their budget yet until they knew what party was going to be in. Do you know if the budget that we assume that they presented pre-election is the budget they're going to be adopting? And do you know when that is planned to take place? Because that could change figures, right?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Sherwood, you're absolutely correct. So and that's why I was very discerning as to what I did put on the report. So if you take a look at some of the bullet points that I have provided, most of those bullet points are essentially predictive in nature, irrespective rather of who gets to govern the province of Ontario. As to your second question, honestly, I'm drawing a blank right now. I don't know when this is going to be approved, but I would believe that it would be approved shortly because we're already halfway through the year and some of these programs have to be put in implementation. So I would think very shortly.
So fingers crossed that we don't see any drastic changes once they approve their budget.
I don't think there would be a lot of drastic changes vis-a-vis some of the bullet points that I have put on the report, because these programs have been there for many, many years, and they're essentially what we call the predictive funding sources.
Perfect. Thank you.
I had an opportunity to meet with former Collingwood Mayor Brian Saunderson on Saturday, and he told me that, and he's just been elected as MPP in the Conservative majority government, and that the plan is that they'll be sitting in July. So very likely the budget will be dealt with in July. Okay, any further questions on this report, Council? All right, all in favor? Thank you. Thank you, Madam Treasurer. All right, moving on to 12.11, OPP Transition Cost Update, CAO Report 2022-007, recommendation that the report CAO 2022-007 OPP Transition Cost Update be received. Can we have a motion to receive this, please? Deputy Mayor McIntosh, seconded by Councillor Andrews. Any questions or comments, Council? Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship. I just wanted to question this pension top-up, and I noticed it was put in this year. Can I get a little bit of an explanation? Because that's a substantial amount of money. Can I get an explanation? I'm not sure if that's Councillor Taylor. If you're the Police Services Board Chair, maybe you could explain that? Or
well, this
anybody?
is the CAO's report, Councillor Sherwood. So, Mr. Osmond, do you have an answer, sir?
Thank you, Your Worship. I would have to defer that to the treasurer since she did the heavy lifting on this report. So I'll just ask Saeed if she'd like to speak.
Yeah, pension top up, $624,959. Could you comment on that, please, Madam Treasurer?
You're muted there. Oh.
You're muted. Thank you.
I do apologize. I was about to defer this to Ms. McKinney. I think she would be able to provide
all right
explanation of this.
Ms. McKinney.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, in response to your question, Councillor Sherwood, the pension top-up was subject to the outstanding arbitration as it related to the disbandment, and it had timelines associated with it within which the money needed to be paid in order to complete those transfers as people had moved from the OPS, which would have been OMERS, to the Ontario Pension Board.
Okay, because I was just kind of thinking that would have all been part of the severance, but no, severance would have been paid to the individual, whereas this is actually paid for the individual to the pension plan. Boy, that's a significant amount of money there. This was for, I'm sorry, and this was for
pension
members.
shortfalls in the transition from OPS to OPP.
So these were members that got hired, not ones that didn't get hired. And what was there a difference in the level of the pension amount paid? Like, so OPPs with a different pension board, Ontario Pension Board.
Yes, through you, Your Worship, to the councillor, that's correct. So these would be the members of the OPS who transitioned to the OPP, didn't receive severance, but may have had pension shortfalls created when they transitioned from one pension to the other. There was a variety of factors that contributed to that at the time. I think we talked about them previously in another session. We were giving an update on individual members, but there were a couple of driving factors there that led to this amount, and these amounts were calculated by the pension board themselves, and as I had indicated, were subject to the arbitration, so they were awarded directly on their behalf. They weren't negotiated.
Okay, so these weren't really unexpected costs. This was costs we kind of expected with the whole transition costs.
I would suggest they were costs we were aware that would be coming, but we couldn't predict until the calculation would have been completed what the total would be. So yes, I agree.
This is a one-time payout. We're not going to be doing this anymore, right?
Well, as I recall, the Police Service Board went to bat on behalf of the town, and Mr. Taylor will share some more thoughts. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. we did have a private discussion in closed session, and why I'm bringing that up is it's just there's things here that are related to people and monies that can't be disclosed in a public session. However, the way the mayor has described that is exactly how it went. There was a pension shortfall. The board and the town believed that the new employer should pay those costs. So we went to arbitration. We fought that. The arbitrator ruled in favor of the OPP. And so to be clear, at no time would those people, the employees, have ever been out any money. It was more about who was going to pay. Would it be the new employer or the old employer? The new being the OPP and the old being the town of Orangeville. The arbitrator ruled against the board and against the town, and we lost, and we're out that money.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that clarification, everyone.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to receive this. Any further questions? No? All in favor? All right. Items 13.1 and 13.2. We have notice of dividend from Orangeville Hydro, 13.1, and we have notice from Town of East Scariffraxa regarding a public meeting on their file OPA 9. We have a motion to receive both pieces of correspondence, please. Councillor Sherwood, Councillor Peters. Councillor Peters, you have a question, sir, on one of these items?
I did quickly, through you. The council agenda items that come as a separate package, I would lump into correspondence in my thinking, but I had a comment on those. I don't know if you want me to bring up now or in new business.
Yeah, I guess maybe we should ask our town clerk about that. Madam Clerk, should those correspondence that are on that separate agenda package be included on the agenda here? Just why aren't they? If for
because the procedures provide that only items that are that come from a Dufferin County municipality are included right on the agenda. The other items are included in your information package, but certainly a member of council can bring forward anything that's included on the information package for council's consideration.
And here we are. So, Councillor, okay, so why don't we separate this? Can we just receive these two pieces of correspondence and then have Councillor Peter ask this question? All in favor of receiving this? These two pieces. Thank you. Councillor Peters, go ahead, sir.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you, and thanks, Ms. Landry, for the clarification. I wanted to bring up a set of motions made primarily by the City of Waterloo, City of Cambridge, and City of Kitchener regarding the future of the Ontario Building Code and increasing the energy efficiency in that code at a more accelerated pace to reflect the environment that we're in and the carbon neutrality goals of various municipalities, the province, and the country. Those motions have collectively been supported by other municipalities as well, as you would have seen in that package. And I believe Orangeville should also support that. One or all of those motions, essentially in a nutshell, again, to accelerate the energy requirements of the Ontario Building Code to provide for a lower carbon future.
Just from a protocol standpoint, I'll ask Madam Clerk again, is this something that Councillor Peters should bring as a motion at our next meeting, or can we deal with it tonight in terms of support of one or all of those letters, Madam Clerk?
What I would suggest, Councillor Peters, is what we could do is considering the three, you referred to three different pieces of correspondence that perhaps has different wording within the recommendations themselves. If it was okay with Councillor Peters, we would work with you just to draft what that notice of motion would look like and include it on your next agenda. And we'll include that material as just backup to that, if that would be all right with Councillor Peters.
Okay. Yeah, I thought an endorsement might be a quick item, but I can understand the language piece. So, okay, I'll work with you offline on that. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you, Councillor Peters. All right, moving along. Item 14 is committee and board minutes. We have 14.1 through 14.4. Committee of Adjustment, Joint Accessibility Advisory ×2, and the Orangeville Police Service Board minutes. We have a motion to receive, please. Councillor Post, seconded by Councillor Taylor. Any questions or comments on those minutes? All in favor? Thank you. Any notices of motion at meeting? Seeing none, any new business? Councillor Andrews and then Councillor Post.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And as per the suggestion from Madam Clerk Carolina Khan, as members of council know that I sit on the POA board, and to give council a very quick update at this time, I know it's very late. There were a variety of issues that were highlighted at our most recent June 2nd meeting, and some of which have been the cancellation of some of the court hearings. Now, as much as it doesn't necessarily affect Orangeville Council, it is more of an FYI that there have been a substantial number of cases that have and could be affected by this, primarily because of the backlog, JP shortages, and a variety of other issues. But the one key piece that did come about is, in fact, we've seen an increase in some of the traffic offenses that our OPP detachment here in the Orangeville area are tracking, and they've done an excellent job in supporting that. And the other was the request from the POA board to ask for a Town of Orangeville staff member to be a part of the 10-year capital plan consultation subcommittee, which has been filtered through departmentally. And this will be a very important piece because, again, Orangeville plays an important role of our local courthouse that is, of course, at the Zionist Street location. But this was just something, as per Madam Clerk had suggested to bring to council's attention during this time. So just a quick update for members of council.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. We've got Councillor Post and then Councillor Peters. Go ahead, Councillor Post.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Just a really quick update to council and also to the public who's still hanging in there with us. This Saturday is Celebrate Your Awesome, which is our local celebration of pride and diversity. We are back in person on Mill Street with lots of great things to offer, including live music all day starting at 1 o'clock. We've got an awesome human library as part of the library offerings that day. Plus, we've got vendors and artists and all sorts of really great stuff. And more than anything, we've got a great supportive, inclusive area where everybody can feel safe and have fun. And I hope to see everybody there. I just wanted to let everybody know we will kind of be doing an opening ceremony type thing starting at about 12:30 or 12:45 if everybody wanted to attend at that time. And other than that, we'll be on the street until about 10 o'clock. So I look forward to seeing everybody on Saturday.
Thank you, Councillor Post. Councillor Peters.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick update for council and the public. If you recall the Hutchinson Court naturalization issue that we had a couple of years ago, Sustainable Orangeville is working on that section with staff. We had volunteers out this past weekend getting rid of certain varieties in that section. There's been some budget dedicated to some new native plantings in that area. So it is an ongoing project, and we are looking for help from the public over the next several weeks, both to remove some of the unwanted species and to plant some of the new healthy native and non-invasive species. So good news for folks in that area. It is an ongoing project, and looking to revitalize that area and keep both the natural elements while addressing some resident concerns.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Peters, and thank you to Sustainable Orangeville for taking on that project. All right, Madam Clerk, do we have any questions from the public?
I'm not
aware.
Yes, I'm not aware of anyone else on the line, Mr. Mayor, but I would like to have Mona confirm that.
And through your worship, currently we don't have anyone on the line.
Very good. Okay, moving on to our bylaws. The recommendation that the bylaws listed below be read 3 times and finally passed. That's a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 22-90 as amended. A bylaw to amend bylaw 021-209 to confirm appointments to various boards and committees, and a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council of the corporation of the town of Orangeville at a regular council meeting held on June 13th, 2022. Can I have a motion on those 3, please? Councillor Peters, Councillor Andrews, Councillor Sherwood, all in favor? And a motion to adjourn, please. Councillor Post, Councillor Taylor, all in favor? All right, thank you, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
All right.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
I can't believe we made it through it.
Thanks. Bye-bye now.
Good night.